Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
1-1 pitch, a fly ball left field deep. This will send Pollock back at the track, at the wall, jumps up, and that's gone. Alex Kirilloff goes opposite field, a 2-run homer to left. And with one swing of the bat, the Twins are back in front. It is 4-3 in Seattle.
They're giving Newbar second base, but I don't know if he will take it. He's not going, and the pitch is hammered to left field. This could be, and it's gone. Nolan Arenado, a walk-off big fly. A 3-run shot into the bleachers, and the Cardinals walk it off here at Busch Stadium.
Deep drive to left. If it's fair, it's going to leave the yard. Home run. Seiya Suzuki with a line drive. Right down the line and left. It left the park in a major hurry. And the Cubs trail by 1. It's now 3-2.
Wells, the right-hander, sets, fires. And this ball's hammered to center field deep. Heading back, hits to the track, to the wall. It's gone. A 3-run home run. Jason Hayward. And the Dodgers strike first tonight. It's 3-0.
Good morning, everybody out there. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Ravi Lulla in for Damon Benning this week. Andrew Rogers, happy to have you with us. Live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club, 590 ESPN Radio in Omaha. The phone line, 888-638-4876. We're live on YouTube, live on Twitter, the Hail Varsity Radio and Hurrdat Sports YouTube pages. You can interact there in the comment section. We'll see it. We'll talk about it. Good morning, Ravi.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. I'm feeling okay after the Kobe Bryant episode yesterday of The Last Dance. Hit me a little different.
Yeah, hit you in the feels.
Well, you know, it's one of those things. Every time I hear Kobe, see Kobe, talk about Kobe, it reminds me he's one of the only people, and it's weird, that I could tell you what I was doing, where I was, and how I reacted to his death. And
yeah,
like I could just tell you that the time, the place, everything.
Yeah.
I could tell you what I was eating.
Yeah.
I was at USD, University of South Dakota, covering a volleyball match with two of the other sports reporters in town back in Sioux City. I was eating pasta, and I get an update on my phone that says TMZ.
Yeah,
that was the first group to report it.
Yep.
TMZ, helicopter crash, Kobe and Gianna die.
Yeah.
And I looked up from my phone to my two guys and I go, Kobe just died. And they go, what? Nobody thought it was serious.
Right, yeah.
And I said, no, guys, Kobe just died.
Yeah.
And so now every time I see him, I think about just the story I had to report on him. I had to go back to the news station. We led with it that day. I think Elizabeth Warren was in town, and I said, no, we're leading with Kobe.
Yeah, I
mean, he's a more iconic figure than Elizabeth Warren. And we led with Kobe that show, and it was very somber, and I wore purple and gold. Like I can tell you everything about that day.
Yeah, so I was actually on the air when it happened. I was doing pregame for Creighton and Butler. It was a Sunday, and I believe it was Creighton's pink out game that year. And so I'm doing pregame for it on the radio, and the old sports director back at the old station, who works there part-time just because he can't leave radio. He has retired 4 times. Shout out to Neil Nelkin. He's a legend in the industry, at least here in Omaha. And he comes in and shows me his phone. I'm on the air while this is happening. Like, I'm actively talking about Creighton and Butler. And he shows me his phone, and it says TMZ reporting that Kobe Bryant has died in a helicopter accident. And he's like whispering to me, have you seen this? And I shake my head, no. And so I hit my mute button real quick, and I go, is this real? Because it's like,
TMZ.
It's TMZ, and frankly, on stuff like this, they usually get it right. But there's a thing in my head that's like, hey, it's TMZ. And also, there was a part of me that didn't want to believe it.
Right. It's that
I was hoping
in your brain.
Yes.
Kobe's not dead. There's no way Kobe's dead.
And I was a huge Kobe Bryant fan. One of my first jerseys I ever got was a purple Lakers Kobe Bryant jersey.
8 or 24.
8. It was the second one. It was the second jersey I ever got. The first one was a 1996 Scottie Pippen USA jersey. And then the second one I ever got was this Kobe Bryant jersey. I believe I got it for Christmas one year. And this was like 97, 98. So this was young Kobe. I was on board early. And so Kobe Bryant was a huge figure for me growing up. And it's the reason he's the reason I rooted for the Lakers until Steph Curry came into the league, basically. And so I'm on the air and just trying to keep it together. Because I'll admit I cried when he died. As soon as I got off the air, I just sat in my car and cried because he was so important to me, and it was like a shocking thing. And
he
so
was very, very great in the community after his basketball career.
Yeah, and he did. Honestly, it was kind of the way that he approached his craft, if you will, and kind of his mindset, which was very Jordan-esque. He talks about it in episode 5 of Last Dance, how everything you got from me, I got from him. Right? I think that's a line that he says
the
almost
reason we're
verbatim.
talking about Kobe is because that he starred in episode 5.
Yeah, episode 5 of The Last Dance.
And I am reacting to watching The Last Dance this week, as everybody knows.
For the first time.
Hey, people don't need to know that.
And so as this is going on, I'm reminded of kind of the way he approached things. And the thing that really struck me about Kobe Bryant was the way that he, the audacity of believing he could be Michael Jordan. Because that's essentially what he was doing. He's like, I can replicate that. He saw the greatest basketball player of all time, who countless people tried to replicate. The entire NBA in the mid-90s to the mid-2000s was trying to find, whether it was Vince Carter, Tracy McGrady, whoever, trying to replicate that single scorer type offense that could dominate the league. And nobody else could do it, right? And Kobe comes along and says, yeah, I can do that. And to be fair, he didn't quite get there. He was never quite as good as Jordan. But close. But the fact that he dared to put that out there and say, hey, this is the goal. The goal is not to be a great basketball player. The goal is not even to be an all-time basketball player. The goal is to be the greatest basketball player of all time. And I'm going to do it the exact same way that he did it. He got 90% of the way there. and that's an incredible accomplishment.
One of the best scorers in NBA history.
To get to 90% of Michael Jordan is closer than anyone else has ever gotten, basically. And obviously, LeBron's got a different game and stuff like that. But Kobe just took the blueprint and was like, I can do this. And so that was always a kind of, I always found that kind of inspirational, honestly, because sometimes the idea of reaching for things is kind of scary, especially when you're overreaching to something like that. Because let's be clear, deciding that you can be Michael Jordan, I don't care what your physical gifts are, is nuts. It's just you have to be out of your mind. And he came pretty damn close. He almost did it. And because he had the courage to try and to say it out loud and to go for it the way he did, he became a top 10 basketball player of all time, somewhere in that neighborhood, depending on, where you put him. And so that, I don't think I realized it in the moment, but that was a lot of what I was experiencing, was this kind of inspirational figure to me was just gone. And he was the first athlete that I cared about a lot that died prematurely, or even celebrity figure, I loved The Dark Knight and I loved Heath Ledger, but I didn't have an emotional attachment to him. A lot of these celebrities that die young, I didn't have a personal, not that I ever met Kobe or anything, but you know what I mean? I didn't have a personal attachment to him. And so he was kind of the first one that I was like, oh, we were supposed to have more time with him. And that really hit me in kind of a dramatic way. And so, yeah, rewatching the episode 5 of The Last Dance is, I don't want to say it's emotional anymore, but it hits you different.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's been a few years, obviously, since he passed, but it hit you really different. When I first watched it, it was only about 6 months after he had passed, and it was pretty emotional. It brought back a lot of things for me.
I don't know if I've cried to a celebrity dying.
Yeah.
Like
that was the first time and only time at this point.
There's a trend that has been going around on TikTok and other social media platforms where kids will start recording and then tell their parents that their favorite actress or singer has passed away.
Yeah, that's pretty messed up.
I don't know if I have an attachment like that to anyone. I'm trying to sit here and think like, all right, Andrew, if you could pick one person that you were just overly attached to, like who would that be? And
I didn't think I did, to be clear. I didn't.
Right.
Because I always kind of thought it was a little silly when people would react that way when celebrities died. And like I remember specifically when Robin Williams died. I know a lot of people really cared about him. And there were some people in my life that I knew that were like actively grieving him. And I was like, listen, he was great, but it felt a little silly to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Kobe thing happened and I was like, oh, I get it.
Yeah, I don't know if there's like a Cardinal player, if there's a Blues player.
We're in a different time period now when it comes to celebrities and that sort of thing compared to the way it was in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, whatever, because I mean, I think more people back then gravitated more towards them than they do now because they're in so many roles. And you actively, I think at that time period, like in the 80s and the 90s, you actively, if there was a Robin Williams movie that came out, you went to see it just because it was a Robin Williams movie.
I think too.
So, and I don't think that happens nowadays when it comes to actors and actresses. You know, I don't think most people go to see a movie just because somebody's in it.
But I also kind of wonder, though, if we feel closer to celebrities because of social media. Like, it feels like we know them more, you know?
Maybe, maybe there's a few, like, ex-Cardinal players, but I think the reason Kobe hit a lot of people differently was because he was one of the best to ever play the game.
Yeah.
And he was so young. And, he was so iconic that people would go around with balls of paper. When you throw it into the trash can, you say Kobe.
Yeah.
You don't say...
Kobe.
Like it,
I
don't say Yachty or Molina whenever I like throw something from here to the wall. Or
you don't even
Albert
say
Pujols if I hit a home run.
You don't even say Jordan. You don't It's Kobe, right? When you're tossing stuff in the trash, he has a iconic place in the culture, and so especially if you were kind of growing up in, I think a lot of people my age, and you see this in the NBA, right? A lot of the guys that are stars now, Kobe was their Jordan, right? He was the Jordan for the next generation. You hear the reverence that a lot of those guys talk about Kobe with. He was their inspiration the way Jordan was his. And so we're kind of getting to the end of that era where whether it's like the LeBrons, the Paul Georges, the like Devin Bookers of the world. I know Devin Booker's younger, but those guys looked up to Kobe the way everybody else looked up to Jordan. And so he had this huge cultural impact in terms of the basketball world and everything like that. And yeah, it was just, I was really, frankly, I was taken aback by my own reaction to it. I was not prepared to react that way.
Well, no one was prepared to
get the news, right? Yeah, but I never thought there was a celebrity that I would react that way to. And the fact that it was Kobe kind of took me off guard. Like if Jordan died and I cried, I would probably get it because I was like, I'm a huge Jordan guy. Obviously, knock on wood. Like if Steph died, I would be devastated.
I mean, he could be a close second though to Kobe in regards to Curry.
Yeah, right.
People are saying that now.
Yeah, and I probably care about Steph more than I did about Kobe or Jordan, to be honest. But there's not a lot. There's a handful of, like, I kind of thought, like when David Ortiz got shot in the Dominican Republic a few years ago, if it was going to be anybody, I thought it would be like him or Pedro. Because those were like my guys on those Red Sox teams. And when he got shot, I was like, oh, that's really too bad, because it seemed like he was going to die for a minute there. but I didn't react like this. It was
crazy.
And maybe it's because it was a near miss. I don't know.
Well, to further go with that episode, we were kind of joking coming in today because episode 5 and 6, excuse me, they're connected in a way financially than more people think. So episode 5 was a lot about the shoe deal with Jordan and how much money he gets in and Nike's risk to take on giving him passive income and result of the revenue that came in from the shoes. And so they forgoed a ton of money by doing that, but also got a ton of money in return and still do today. So I think the goal was $3 million in the first year. They sold $162 million worth of shoes. Yeah. Jordan rakes in roughly $400 million a year off of just his built up interest in Nike or his stock in Nike.
And it's the sales still, because he still gets he gets a percentage.
I can't imagine what the sales were like after the Last Dance.
Oh yeah.
But then it goes into episode 6 in the 93 championship when they went down 2-0. Jordan goes to the casino with his dad to blow off some steam and comes back. The media is all over him he's not totally invested into this finals run. All of a sudden now it's hey, he's got a gambling problem, which I truly believe he does. It could go down as competitiveness. Like he says, he's competitive. He just likes to win. He likes to do that stuff. And that's true too. But a lot of competitiveness is betting on either yourself in the moment, whether there's actual money put down or it's actually betting money. So I'm just call it what it is, man. Just say you like to bet and that's that. Just move forward with it. And the media, stop exhausting a storyline that, you're trying to grab onto any and everything Jordan in this moment. I get it.
Yeah.
But all in all, I think it's funny because we talked and said this guy could lose $1 million a year.
A day.
I'm sorry, $1 million a day and still be in the green just because of his Nike deal.
Yes. And that's not talking about any other deal. That's not talking about the value of the franchise he owns. Nothing else. If he lost $1 million a day gambling, and he would still be plus 35 million, right? And which is still an insane amount of money, right? And so the gambling thing is interesting because I think it there's two things that I think are interesting here. Number one, I think it depends on how you define problem gambling, because most people define it as you sacrifice money that you need for other things.
And notice how I didn't say problem.
Right.
I said addiction.
Yes, I think he's addicted to I do think he's addicted to competition more than gambling, but
those go hand in hand.
At this point in his life, that's the only place he can find competition that he cares about is through gambling. So it's kind of a fine distinction.
Same
there.
thing with golf, though, on the course.
Right,
he goes out there and he's just betting money away.
But the reason I think
he was throwing quarters in the episode and betting with security guards.
So that's why I think it's about competition and not about gambling, because it doesn't matter the amount of money.
But that's because he doesn't have to worry about the amount of money.
Maybe. But
he's cool with throwing $20 down and losing it just like that. If I threw $20 down, I'm like, dang it.
But remember the story that Will Perdue talks about when they're on the plane and he comes up and plays blackjack with them for $1 a hand? I genuinely think the money is totally inconsequential to him.
That's what it is.
But I don't think it's about how much he already makes. I think it's because he just wants to win, and the money is a sign of winning.
I think we're talking hand in hand here, Ravi. I think we're talking about the same thing.
Maybe.
Money is nothing to Jordan. It is about being competitive, right? But it also plays into an addiction for his vice is gambling. Everybody has a vice.
Yeah.
Right? Like during that title run, down 2-0, the only reason everyone knew about Michael Jordan and gambling is because he was the best player in the world.
Right.
And everybody was attracted to him. What was Scottie Pippen? What was Dennis Rodman? What was Steve Kerr doing during this time? What if Steve Kerr's thing was going to a library 30 minutes out of town and just reading a book? Like, would you say anything about that? Like, well, he drove away from the complex. He's not with his team. Like, no, you're not doing anything.
Well, it's because it's an acceptable, right?
Right.
But
who puts that standard as acceptable?
Well, just society, right? You know, it's just a thing that we decided we're okay with reading.
Is that right, though?
No, I'm not saying it's right or that it's okay, but it's as a society kind of what we've deemed to be okay.
If he wants to gamble, let him go gamble.
Yeah.
Blow off steam.
Well, and so
He
I
was
think
with his dad.
I think the other thing that fuels into this, and you mentioned, you kind of hinted at it, is up until that point, Michael Jordan's public image was essentially perfect. It was largely unblemished.
Mm-hmm.
And so at a certain point, we get a little sick of it, right? Like as a society, I'm not saying you and me personally, as a society, we kind of get sick of the perfection. We're like, oh, nobody can be that good. Sometimes our worst natures think, well, he can't be that much better than me. Does he think he's better than me? We kind of like start feeding into a kind of a negative thought cycle. And I think that has a large part of what this was. Because listen, Charles Barkley gambled just as much as Michael Jordan did, but Charles Barkley is a largely flawed figure. And so we're like, oh, of course Charles Barkley gambles, right? It didn't matter because we expected that from Charles Barkley because he's dating Madonna and he's throwing guys through windows. Like that's who Charles Barkley was. That's not who Michael Jordan was. He wasn't the guy with a vice. He wasn't the guy with a quote unquote dark side because he went to legally gamble in Atlantic City, right? And so I think a lot of it is we don't like the pretty image after a certain point.
Well, in a weird way, credit to the media for fueling his fire inside of him.
Absolutely.
Saying, I'll show you.
Yeah, he comes on and drops 54 the next game.
I'll show you.
I mean, I don't think the media did the Knicks any favors there.
Definitely.
Because like the last thing that dude needs is a fire lit under him, and you just had like a blowtorch. And so he goes out and he eviscerates the Knicks, and they end up obviously going to the finals.
Yeah,
but
how many did they win in a row? Oh, yeah, 4.
And so, yeah, maybe don't make the guy mad who is notoriously spiteful.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
and when he is feeling competitive, he'll win.
Oh,
he'll win.
He gets to another level.
I'm only bringing one suit to Phoenix.
Right? It is a wild attribute that this dude has that doesn't. When you say things like that, most of the time I'm skeptical because it doesn't feel real. Where it's like, oh yeah, when this guy gets a fire lit under him, he's unstoppable. And it's like, no, he actually is. Like anytime he was properly motivated or angry about something, that was the ball game
for the Bulls.
That was it. It didn't matter who was in front of him. That was the whole deal.
We'll talk to Brian Christopherson, senior writer at Husker 24/7 at 8 o'clock. He's the first guest on the docket. Matt Foster filling in for Andy Kendi over at KETV as a regular this week at 8:30. We'll play 2 for You at 8:45. We'll talk to Louie, Voucher, publisher and managing editor for the WildcatReport.com. Talk a little Northwestern football, upcoming season talk, and the new pieces that came out yesterday within the program. And we'll also talk the Open Championship with Ryan Ballengee, and we will give our picks later on in the show. Michigan Lance, stick around. We will get to you after the break. More CNC next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Hey, welcome back. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Ravi, Lulla, Andrew Rogers, happy to have you with us. Thankful to all of you that join us in the comments section or give us a call, 888-638-4876. Terrence on YouTube says, Andrew, what the heck were you even watching during COVID? This was must-see TV every week. Terrence, believe me when I say this, I have two things I'm going to say. One, you'll probably punch me in the face over. The other, you'd probably be like, yeah, you're just stubborn. But I didn't want to be a part of everybody else. For some reason, some bone in my body said, don't do it yet. I know it was pretty careless of me to do that.
It was a little silly, but I understand
Two, whenever I'm watching something already, I try to finish that before I start something else because I won't ever go back to it. And the show I was watching at the time was Grey's Anatomy. Yeah, that's a good reaction to that.
There was a lot of Sorry, I was going to say there was a lot of people at that time during COVID when documentaries and stuff were coming out that they were just getting turned on to that for the first time, watching that sort of entertainment. So it was really kind of a new medium for a lot of people out there, really.
Well, I'll say this too: Grey's Anatomy is like 26 seasons, and I didn't finish, so there's no excuse to
and
not
still
not
going.
stopping
I
for
think.
The Last Dance.
Yeah. That was
no excuse.
That was a miss on you.
Well, and the other thing about documentaries, I was never like, oh, I have to watch this documentary, which I don't know why, because true stories are my favorite. If I'm watching a movie that's based on a true story, that's my favorite type of movie. So I don't know why I don't.
Did you not get into the 30 for 30s?
And I am into 30 for 30s. So like the NC State one was one of my favorites. Yeah. There's one that I was watching briefly last week, and I had to stop to turn on the Cardinal game, but I need to go back and watch it. It's the one with Sammy Sosa and Mark McGuire.
Yep.
So I'll go back and finish that one up. I think I'm an hour into that, but sometimes I just struggle to really sit down and finish something.
Yeah, my favorite ones were Pony Excess, the SMU one. I've always been fascinated by SMU.
Good one.
Ever since. I mean, since I got into college football.
There's a really good
and found
Arizona State betting scandal.
Yeah.
Documentary that was on Netflix. Part of a series.
The U was a really good 30 for 30. The one about Miami.
Yeah.
That one was really good. But Sasha chimed in and reminded us where the Kobe thing came from.
Reminded you, maybe. Yes. Informed me.
So it came.
I was just a part of the societal trickle-down effect.
Yeah.
Hey, this probably started it, and then it just kind of went to my age group.
It's from a Dave Chappelle skit back in like 2003. And so that's where the yelling Kobe when you throw stuff in the trash came from, to my knowledge. And I believe Sasha's right there. But you were, I believe, pre-K when that came out. So so that maybe doesn't apply to you so much, but I remember watching it. The Chappelle Show was, I didn't watch it live, but I watched it when it came out on DVDs. And so it was a big part of like my college years. So it was a big deal.
Well, speaking of Kobe, let's go to the phone and talk to Michigan Lance. Shane, pot him up. Lance, good morning. Welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning, Ravi and Andrew. How y'all doing today, fellas?
Hey, good,
man.
What's up,
How are
Lance?
you? How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Bring a little context to this Kobe conversation. I think, so when did you guys graduate high school?
2015.
2005.
And all right, so I was in high school when Kevin Garnett and Kobe Bryant was in high school. So I was a freshman when KG was a senior. Kobe was a junior, and then I was sophomore, Kobe senior. So I watched those guys. We pretty much grew up together.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, if you didn't blow out your knee, you would have been better than them.
I obviously not saying that I've played with them, not at all. I'm not one of those guys. Hey, I'm not a revisionist history guy at all. But watching them, I think it's the way we watch them, because you don't really think about it as you're going through it, but until somebody passes away. So if it was Kevin Garnett instead of Kobe, I think people would have had the same reaction, because we actually saw those guys from high school play in high school to be drafted, because they were one of the first. They were the first two, you know what I mean? KG being the first and Kobe being the second to do that in the cable era and the internet era. Like, we watched them daily, and we really don't realize it until somebody's gone, and that's unfortunate. Mm-hmm. Because I didn't grow up a Kobe fan. Mm-hmm. I'm not a Kobe fan, but I respect what he does. I respected his game, but I thought he was too much copycat. In the era I grew up in, we were about originality. Now, if you want to take the work ethic and all that, that's fine. But when you start, trying to talk like somebody, walk like somebody, and chew gum like somebody, in my era, we didn't fly with that, and so Kobe, but it still affected me, because I was like, dang, hold on a second, man. I knew this. I've been watching this guy half of my life and his life. You know what I mean? Since he was 16, 17 years old. So I did have a feeling it did affect me in a way, because we saw them so much. And when you talk about I believe that's what it more of what it was with Kobe. Like, the Kobe shot, that actually came from Dave Chappelle. Like, there was a Dave Chappelle skit where he said that and did that. It really had nothing to do with Kobe's game at that time, because at the time when he said it, Kobe's game was still high flying. It wasn't like he lost his hops and was shooting more of the fadeaway. It was still more in his prime with his hops. Mm-hmm. So he didn't really rely on that a lot. So it really wasn't his game that got us doing that. It was that. And then from there, people started to, emulate, oh, yeah, Kobe. But, obviously his game, I'm just kind of just giving context of the culture impact that he had, because Jordan had a different impact than him.
Mm-hmm.
Allen Iverson had a different impact than him. You know what I mean? Like, Kobe's impact was basketball only. Those guys transcended. It was back on the court, but also off the court as well.
Lance, we appreciate the call, man. Thanks. And
thanks, fellas.
There's another thing into that too that I think when he was talking about just the Kobe thing and the attachment there to the people, it's almost the same with Jordan, though, in the sense of when the campaign came out, like Be Like Mike, right? Every kid wanted to be like Mike. Well, then you hear something, and was it a Spike Lee commercial too with Michael Jordan?
I think that was a different one. That was the Nike
one?
one. The Gatorade one was the Be Like Mike.
Trying to connect the dots here, but then
they were about the same time
But
frame,
looking at the Dave Chappelle skit too, and seeing what they did there, it almost just when you see something funny or you really like somebody, and then everybody starts talking about it, and now all of a sudden, even if you didn't expect it to take off like it did, people are like, I like Kobe Bryant now.
Yeah.
And so there's like just this thing of
kind
like,
of
you don't know why.
Perpetuating.
Right? You don't know why, but you're just like, I kind of like Kobe because this person likes Kobe and I look up to this person. Now, and in a way, I know what he's saying about originality. About
the thing where he started like talking like Jordan, that was a little weird. I was more talking about emulating his game.
Well, and it's okay, and Lance would be the first person to say this too. It's okay to have role models.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to try to emulate your game after other people, because that's what we're seeing a lot today too. Kobe was just kind of like the first to like really start that trend.
Oh yeah, guys steal moves and stuff from each other all the time.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's not even close. I mean, there's some that are like Curry is a different ball handler than anybody else, but that's also why you see kids at home trying to do dribble drills. Like,
that's why Curry is who he is, right?
So,
and Kobe admitted it. I mean, he mentioned in the documentary. He says everything that you saw from me came from him. So, like, he's fully aware of it. Like, it's not like he's acting.
I don't fault him at all for using his resources.
No, why not?
Just like me, I ask questions that I don't know the answer to. If I'm not an expert in something, I'll try to ask you.
If Michael Jordan's
else to
answering your call, you take everything that man says. Like, if that dude actually picks up the phone when you call, like, you take everything you can from that man. I get it. I do agree with Lance a little bit, where some of the mannerisms and stuff that part of it was a little bit strange, but he brought up a good point. He grew up in front of our eyes. He was probably trying to find himself a little bit too. I mean, he came into, I believe he was 17 when he was drafted. He couldn't even legally sign his own contract. I think he had to have a parent or guardian there. And so, which is wild.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
And so
I always talk about that. Like, can you believe that Jason Tatum is my age? Like,
it's crazy.
You just start making those comments a lot.
By the way, one other thing that Jordan had that was really cool that nobody was really doing at that time. I mean, he was releasing video. I mean, he had the VHS videos, like the hour-long documentaries that he had, like Flight or whatever it was called.
Yeah.
That
like
stuff
Space Jam?
No, not Space Jam.
Oh, yeah. That's based on a true story, right?
Absolutely.
That's funny.
100% fact.
You can just go into a different dimension anytime. We'll take a short break. When we come back, I want to bring up SEC Media Days a little bit. Maybe the Pac-12 TV deal that is supposed to be here but still isn't. That's next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Hey, welcome back. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Ravi, Lulla, Andrew Rogers, happy to have you with us. Let's take a moment and tell you about Zipline's newest beer, the Can Opener Ale. Shane, do you remember what's in the Can Opener Ale?
Hops.
It isn't
Beer.
Maybe. What else do you think? What does it taste like, Shane?
Is there flour in it?
That like what kind of flour? Like
yeast.
tulips?
I think you're talking about yeast.
Is there yeast in it?
Yeast.
I think you mean guava.
Yeast.
There's some guava.
There is some guava and lemon in their new summer crusher, the Can Opener Tropical Ale, perfect for that hot summer day, refreshing and slightly tart. You can get it from your favorite beer store, and it's now available at all Zipline locations. I actually picked up a 6-pack of that yesterday when I stopped by a big distributor out by is it the Oak Grove Mall?
Oakview.
Is that the
Oakview,
Oakview? See,
yeah.
I'm trying. I got 50% of the way.
The beer, wine, and spirits
Yes,
store?
that's it.
So that's in an old Toys R Us building.
Yeah, and it's sweet.
And so I always just call it the Booze R Us store.
Oh,
Which I think they missed
a
a
little
naming.
Ravi twist.
I think they missed a naming opportunity there.
Yeah, probably. But maybe they ran into some.
Now it's like
you know.
Well, I think Toys R Us is out of business. So what are they going to do?
Oh, they probably still own like the name for like 10 years, right? Isn't that how it works?
Do they own the R Us though?
I think
maybe if you did it like the logo.
Yeah, maybe.
If you did chicken scratch, I doubt it.
I think it's still an online thing. Like they have an online.
Oh,
store.
Toys R Us does?
I think so.
There you go.
Interesting. There you go.
Also, something that I don't know if you're big into media day coverage outside of the Big Ten. Do you watch Like, did you watch the Big 12 or the SEC media days or anything like that, or just like
No, I kind of
scroll?
I kind of scroll through headlines and stuff like that, but I'm not as locked in unless something squirrely happens.
Right. So something I talked about a little bit last year with Kirby Smart in the schedule talk and the doubters. People were saying that Georgia wasn't going to be as good, and he remembered that.
Yeah,
and so
nobody
did the
said
team.
that. Nobody said that, Kirby.
Well, some people probably did, but I can't imagine like that was your all-out Michael Jordan moment of, hey, I'm going to turn this into competitiveness and not my addiction for gambling. Not to say Kirby Smart has an addiction to gambling or anything.
He apparently has an addiction to whining.
But he is definitely hot and bothered by schedule talk, because for the second straight year, people are asking him about the schedule. And you had to predict this was coming, Kirby. Right?
Yes.
When you get in front of other faces outside of Georgia media members, you had to predict that, hey, somebody's going to ask me about this schedule because it doesn't seem like it's that tough. So he responds with 3 words: come play it. You come play this schedule, and you tell me that playing in the SEC isn't difficult. But then he goes on to say, better never rests. Well, if you're being better, when you want to, like,
play a better schedule,
things like that. But that's not really where I want to land with this. Kirby, here's my thing for you. If you are the best team in football and have been the best team in college football the last 2 years, be prepared to take on criticism on every and anything. That's what the media does. They find one thing about your team, and they're going to continually ask you about it.
Yeah.
What did we talk about in the whole first hour?
That's what we were talking about
with Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
The media finds one thing because he's the best at it, and they're just going to lock in on that one thing. You just have to know that.
Yeah.
You don't need to get defensive or anything like that. Just say, look, the schedule just didn't pan out the way that, we thought it would. They were supposed to play Oklahoma, right? And now they aren't, or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Now they've got UT Martin though, so that'll be a
yeah, that'll be a good one. That'll be a really good one. No, you have to be able to expect those topics. Now, aside from Kirby Smart, the other head coach that probably hit a lot of the college football nation like Kobe hit just the sports world was Mike Leach.
Yeah.
Passing away back in January. And so that was a talking point for Mississippi State, especially Will Rogers. He was in the spotlight a lot, not just because he's one of the only returning quarterbacks in the SEC that at least people can remember outside of Jaden Daniels at LSU. I'm trying to think who else is at the top there, but he took on a lot of conversations about Coach Leach. And then you have Zach Garnett, who's taking over for Mississippi State, which I thought was cool to see how humbled and honored he was to be in that position, and taking the next title of head coach after Mike Leach. But another big storyline is Hugh Freeze in the SEC. Because he comes in off of Liberty and off of some allegations of his own. Are they allegations or was it proven?
I think he admitted it.
I think they were proven.
I think he admitted it.
So I should say after just baggage, he's coming in with some baggage of his own.
Yep.
And he embraces the challenge of rebuilding Auburn, which I think is what Harsin didn't do.
I mean, Harsin was just a bad hire. He was a bad fit. He was a bad hire. They fumbled the bag pretty hard on that.
Oh, did they fumble?
Yeah.
Did they have some
They
fumbles?
fumbled the bag.
Oh, is that a little tie into the football reference?
Well,
here?
It's listen, Hugh Freeze as a football coach is a terrific hire for them.
And he fits into the SEC.
Yeah,
that's where he found most of his success.
He fits into the culture. He was one of the only guys that's had any level of success against Saban. Really, really good football coach. Kind of slimy as a human being, doesn't make you feel great about it. But Auburn doesn't
mean
care.
He can't change.
But Auburn doesn't care about that either,
right?
Like Auburn is okay with that.
Well, and
that's the price they're willing to pay.
And I think a lot of teams take a similar approach.
Sure.
Like there are schools out there that put tradition first. I'd say Nebraska is one of them. When all the Urban Meyer talks were going around, like they knew that was a
not
non-option.
Not just tradition, but like the expectations kind of their program, right? There is at Nebraska, and this is up for debate because if Urban Meyer came in here, won a national title, and then burned it to the ground like he has just basically everywhere else he's ever been, there's a portion of the fan base that would probably have been okay with that because they got the national title.
They won.
Yeah, because
because football's about winning ultimately,
but
in a
there's
fan's perspective.
There's a lot of the Nebraska fan base that requires Nebraska to win with a certain level of character, a certain level of class. And a national title, if it came with dirty hands, I don't think the entire fan base would be on board with that. And the SEC is different for the most part. The SEC is mostly because of how competitive historically it is, because of the situation between like Alabama and Auburn. If you're being outshined by your in-state rival on a consistent basis, you probably are willing to sacrifice some things in order to catch up, right? And so that's where Auburn finds itself, in a place where they're willing to make some sacrifices.
Well, and for me, I mean, it is really all about winning, ultimately what it comes down to. And that's why when everything kind of got started, it was, I was on the Urban Meyer train of like, just hire the guy. He wins in college football. Now they found a better option in Matt Rule, who wins in college football and is a character driven man. So they found,
best of both worlds,
their royal flush up in Nebraska. But that really is what it boils down to. So going back to Hugh Freeze in this instance, that's what you want. And sometimes you put aside, hey, do you actually like the guy as a person? If it means I'm winning football games, more times than not, people would say no. As long as I'm winning, as long as my football team has a W in the stat line or in the scoring chart, like that's all I care about.
So there's a couple different philosophies when it comes to hiring coaches, and it's, to me, there are certain schools that are okay dating a head coach with some red flags because they know they're going to have a good time, but knowing that at some point they're going to have to break up probably, right? Whereas there's certain programs that want to marry their head coach. They want them to be there for 20 years. They want them to retire there. They want it to be, till death do us part, basically. And Auburn is we're willing to date the person with red flags. We're willing to, go out with this person that we know we probably can't marry, probably can't bring home to mom, but we're going to have a really good time while we're dating them. Nebraska generally has not been that way. They want the head coach that they can marry, that they can bring home to mom, that they
right
can
away
have the happily ever after till death do us part. Listen, it has worked on both ends of the spectrum. Urban Meyer is a date the person with red flags head coach. Matt Rule is a
go out and have some fun, go to the bars every weekend, and then Matt Rule is
quite literally,
hey, let's go to church on Sunday with mom.
Yeah, and then let's go out for a big family dinner after church, and
breakfast.
Go to the wherever,
unless you're going on
lunch,
Saturday.
Family lunch is we used to go to lunch after church every Sunday. But yeah, and so it's a different philosophy, and Nebraska historically has always been we want the coach that is going to be there for the long haul. They don't like, ironically, based on the last 20 years, they don't like the coaching turnover. They want somebody that can be there and be a steadying hand. Whereas SEC programs is like, hey, we're going to take this guy for as many wins as he can get us, and then we'll figure it out later. And listen, they're two different philosophies. Obviously, both have worked. Both have worked in college football throughout basically the history of college football. You understand when you hire certain people that, yeah, you're probably going to have to fire them or part ways at some point.
And the girlfriend that you tell your family about that never shows up is like the Pac-12 dealing with this TV deal.
Yes.
You just keep telling them,
that
hey, I have somebody.
Their TV.
And she's special.
Their TV deal goes to another school, but you've never met her.
Imagine if they are a stream-only platform in 2024. How it could go one of two ways for them. It could be really good because everybody streams nowadays. Or it could be really bad because every other college football program is on cable.
Yeah, well, they're going to lose a lot of money if they're stream only. That's whether it works or not. They're going to lose a lot of money.
We'll take a break. We'll talk to Brian Christopherson next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes.
I can enjoy that.
Here is Bryant Christopherson.
1-1 pitch, a fly ball left field deep. This will send Pollard back at the track at the wall, jumps up, and that's gone. Alex Kirilloff goes opposite field, a 2-run homer to left. With one swing of the bat, the Twins are back in front. It is 4-3.
Christopherson.
1-1 pitch, a fly ball left field deep. Back in front. It is 4-3 in Seattle.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio. Here is Husker 24/7 senior writer Ryan Christopherson.
Yeah, it'll be a little bit of a circus act.
Ryan Christopherson.
Well, I mean, that's pretty interesting.
Brian Christopherson.
I kind of enjoy that.
Here is Brian Christopherson.
The 1-1 pitch, a fly ball left field deep. This will send Pollock back at the track at the wall, jumps up, and that's gone. Alex Kirilloff goes opposite field, a 2-run homer to left. And with one swing of the bat, the Twins are back in front. It is 4-3 in Seattle.
All words Brian Christopherson likes to hear. when his Minnesota Twins go up on the board. Back with you, Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. There's the man currently on StreamYard. If you're watching live on YouTube or Twitter, you can see Brian Christopherson there, senior writer for Husker 24/7 at Husker 24/7 BC. I'll give anyone out there the chance to ask Brian anything. If you want to send a question into the chat room, we can grab it there, and I will send that question Brian's way. But let's welcome him in right now. BC, good morning.
Good morning, guys. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Oh, not too shabby. I didn't actually watch that game you played. Thanks for playing the Twins highlights. I do appreciate the gesture.
Yeah, Shane. That's all Shane over there.
Yeah, Shane's a good man. But I was watching the quarterback thing on Netflix, so I actually didn't see the baseball game.
Wow. How are you liking the doc?
I got about 5 episodes in. I just kind of rolled through it. Kirk Cousins, for those who haven't seen it, he's kind of, I think, steals the show a bit and wins your heart. I mean, even if you're not a Vikings fan. And so I've had my doubts about Captain Kirk, but you kind of root for him. He's like your kind of dorky dad that you want to see succeed. He's got a memory room built in his one house, and it's got a spot just for the Lombardi Trophy to go up. And I know Packers and Bears fans and everybody else is laughing at that, like, well, that's just going to be a blank space for his entire life. But it inspired me to hopefully
to get one of your own, to put a blank spot for the trophy.
Yeah, well, to get a memory room, I guess. And then it got me fired up for the season, and I hope the Vikings like rally around getting Kirk this trophy for his memory room.
Well, he may have won the hearts of the people, but can he win in primetime?
Yeah, that came up a few times. I'd make a point to that, which he makes as well. When you're playing in primetime, the Vikings as a team naturally stink in primetime if you go through their records over the years. And you're always playing a good squad, and, so you're going to lose more. So, yeah, we'll try to get that stat righted, though.
Well, okay, let's start here, BC, because yesterday 6 former Huskers were announced to be inducted into the Nebraska Football Hall of Fame in 2023, all deserving of the honor, although it seemed like yesterday was the day to remember Taylor Martinez after he headlined the group. Is there a favorite memory of yours or a favorite moment that you two would like to share that sticks with you whenever you hear the name Taylor Martinez?
There's a few. The 2012 game, actually, in East Lansing when he was a junior, and that's like my favorite Taylor Martinez game. That's the one where Nebraska was down 10 in the fourth quarter. They rally. He scored on like a long 35-yard touchdown. Well, he had a long 80-yard run in the first half, but then he had a 35-yarder or something like that in the fourth quarter, and then hits Jamal Turner in the final seconds for Jamal Turner's first Husker touchdown. But in between all that, it's just nutso stuff where he throws a pick inside the 5-yard line. People might remember that Michigan State ran all the way back, but there was a penalty, so it didn't count for a touchdown. And then he had a play where it was my favorite, I guess, encapsulation of Taylor Martinez, where he fumbles the ball. It looks like he might race off for a 70-yard touchdown, but he fumbles it. It looks like Michigan State might pick it up for a second, but 3 Spartans miss it, and Taylor Martinez picks up his own fumble and just keeps running forward for about 5 extra yards. That game had all sorts of weird stuff. But 2010, when he jumped on the scene, I was working at the newspaper, and we had caught wind. We had a decent connection with Pelini. And I'll give my cohort at the time, Sip, a lot of credit. We were pretty well tied to Pelini, and we had kind of caught wind that Taylor was going to be the guy that year as a redshirt freshman. And if you take yourself back to that place in time, most people wouldn't say that. They wouldn't believe it. So I remember on shows like this, you'd go on and you'd say, well, I think you got to watch out for Taylor Martinez. And people would be real skeptical of it because Zach Lee was still in the room as a veteran, although I think he had arm problems at that point in his career. And Cody Green was there. And people were still kind of hoping Cody Green was going to take off at Nebraska. But then Bo kind of kept it a secret publicly up until I think it was when they announced him coming out for the first series. And the crowd, it was just this buzz, unlike any quarterback announcement I've ever heard in that stadium. sort of a like anticipation, but also like, who knows what the heck's going to happen? We don't really know anything about this guy. He had redshirted, but he honestly hadn't been written a lot about that first year. And, the third play, 3rd and 1 from the Western Kentucky 46, he fakes it to Roy Halou and he takes off. And it was just the way he had that burst and separated from everybody. It was one of those oh my moments that you don't get that often in the stadium, but that was one of them, like to really realize this guy's speed and that was going to be a part of the equation. So that memory comes to mind. I also remember he wasn't the best, especially at first behind the mic. And so, he said like he does good against road games, or he had some quote that everyone kind of made fun of before they played at Washington. And I remember going up the elevator to the press box for the Nebraska-Washington game that year, and Washington folks were chuckling like, yeah, let's see, you've played high school road games. Let's see how you handle this environment. And then Nebraska just goes down the field on their first 2 possessions like nobody's business. And Taylor had kind of his coming out party, and then the K-State game a couple weeks later. So 2010 was one of the most fun years I had covering a team, in part because of him. It was a team that probably underachieved a little bit for what they could have done. And you always wonder what would have happened had he not sprained that ankle in the Missouri game. That was a good day for the Huskers, but sort of a bad deal long term with what happened with Taylor. And I think it affected the offense a little bit the rest of the season.
I love playing away games.
Yeah, there you go.
VC, not to just continue down Taylor Martinez memory lane here, but if I were
chills throughout my body.
If I'm remembering right, wasn't it even unclear that he was actually a quarterback when he got recruited? Because he got recruited as an athlete, right? And it wasn't totally clear, at least through a portion of his, I think, redshirt year here, that he was actually going to play quarterback. So that was kind of part of this mystery around him too. It was a very strange situation that I can't really imagine playing out again. Like it just is so bizarre.
Yeah, that's a good point you bring up. For people who weren't following Husker football closely at that point, or they're younger, it definitely was weird, like something you wouldn't see, I think, even now, where you're right. I don't think people even necessarily knew for sure he was a quarterback, or they thought of him as much in the race. I think by the summer, it was clear that he was definitely a guy you should, keep an eye on, but I don't know. Around here, we're sort of trained to think like, well, it's not his turn yet. We kind of think of like we could talk about position battles on this team and how we maybe have to retrain our mind, especially with this staff. Like, hey, I mean, there are freshman guys who are just going to knock some veterans to the side, and you got to keep in mind that could happen. But at that time, I think because Zach, even though the 2009 year had been a struggle, Zach Lee was still around, and Cody Green, it never quite took off for him like people hoped it would, but you have to put yourself back in that year, and there wasn't enough data yet that wasn't going to work yet. So there was a lot of people Cody was a great guy, first off, still is. And, 6'4", 220 QB at the time, or whatever he was, he just like looked apart, and you thought, oh, that's the guy. He was so good in front of the media and all that stuff. And then you get this guy who's a little awkward, of course, in front of the cameras, and so am I. But, he would say stuff that was quirky and all that, like those quotes you played. But when you watched him run that first year, people didn't know what to do with him. And you can't lose sight of the fact, after that K-State game, the 5th game of the season that year, he was like the biggest thing in college football right then. I mean, he really was nationally. He was like the buzz. I remember ESPN had a sports science show. Do you remember that, where they would show you that was great. And the guy did one specifically on like Taylor Martinez after the K-State game, because he was that much like in people's conversation around the country. Like, who is this dude? So yeah, it obviously didn't kind of finish how you wanted in 2013 and the turf toe. And there's always questions about like what went wrong, why he wasn't really part of that season as much. But he definitely deserves to be a representative in the Nebraska Football Hall of Fame. I actually tweeted, I kind of made a mistake. I called it the Huskers Hall of Fame the other day. And there is a distinction there. It's the Nebraska Football Hall of Fame, where it's people have contributed to football of the state of Nebraska. So there's like state college guys and things like that representing that. So people need to kind of be clear on that. But it was cool to see him get in there. And Troy Dumas as well as a guy I just interviewed a couple weeks ago from the 90s that I was
a good friend of the show.
Yeah, I was just really pumped up for him because he gave his body for this program. He really did. If you hear his stories and like what it did to his body, it beat him up, but he was a guy who could hit like nobody's business.
Ryan,
we won.
I wanted to, you mentioned a little bit there, the kind of the deservingness of Taylor Martinez. I'll be honest, it kind of, the idea of it didn't hit me quite right at first, the idea of Taylor Martinez as a Nebraska football Hall of Famer. And then you kind of think about it and you remember, I mean, obviously the stats are there, right? Because of how long he played and started and he was super productive. But it's kind of an odd period in Nebraska football where you kind of always expected more, especially after the way his career started here. More or less after that Kansas State game, a lot of it felt like a disappointment, right? So I think the way I was thinking about Taylor Martinez and kind of the actuality of what happened, especially considering the time since Taylor Martinez, I probably don't remember him as favorably as I should. Is that something you've experienced at all?
Well, I think you're hitting the truth of that era, that there was so many different opinions about, I mean, first off, just the head coach, like that, you could draw a line in the sand there. And so then every topic that separated from there, it feels like there were camps, right? You were over here, over there. Like you believed in Taylor was going to take him to the big place, or you didn't. And it is disappointing a little bit in the sense that 2010 was honestly the team we always talk about the 2009 Big 12 title game around here in the second, and I get it. But 2010, man,
they blew the lead against Oklahoma.
Up 17 points on OU. Taylor wasn't quite 100%, but the game started so well. Mm-hmm. And if Nebraska wins that game, they would have played UConn, I believe, in the Fiesta Bowl because of the way that it was structured and the Big East had to have someone. And Nebraska would have been a top 5 team, probably in the polls, 12-2, if they beat OU in that game. So that's how close that squad was. But then there was that the transition to the Big Ten, which I think was more difficult for Nebraska than we were imagining going in, and you had to adjust to that. And Taylor was right on the ground floor having to do that. And we were still in that period also where 9 to 10 wins. I mean, right now that seems really good, but at the time it was just like, come on, get over the hump, get to that 11 wins, get into that big bowl game and be a top 5, top 10 team consistently. So there was always something that I think for a good deal of the fan base was a little, it felt like something was always left on the table that could have been had. And that, but I do think as time goes on, people look back and be like, yeah, he was a pretty entertaining QB. And you can kind of go back at certain players and you get 5 to 10 years to separate yourself from their careers. And some of the high emotions that carried over from certain games or situations start to drift away a little bit. And you just remember some of the magical plays. And of course, some games that were tough, like Texas A&M on the road when there was a sideline incident in 2010 and all that. So it was definitely a career that always had headlines attached to it that were interesting.
All right, BC, the question coming through the chat room here for you. Who will be the one player on defense, this is from Ken, who has a real nasty streak on the field, if any? A tone setter like Charles Haley, someone who could run C-block.
Boy, that's good. Nasty guy. I don't know if he's going to fit exactly what this question is about, but I'm just going to use it to speak generally about hopes for the D-line and guys who could be difference makers there. And I'm really excited to see what Nash Hutmacher looks like now. I feel like there's enough offseason buzz, and he really took to the strength and conditioning program of Corey Campbell. And, I think the label on him was he was a power guy, of course, who could lift anything, but can he be that guy who has that athleticism and can make plays, east to west and do all that stuff? And it sounds like there's a belief he can, demonstrate more of that in his game this year. And he's been a guy so far who's been kind of what I'd call like a fringe type player. He's important, but he's that 15 to 20 snap a game guy previously. And I think you can see that double and stuff. And he's just one of those players where I think if he can take a couple steps, it changes the picture of how we look at the defense right away, even if we don't know exactly what the scheme looks like when it's game time under Tony White and all that stuff. So he's a guy that, does he have that nasty like edge type that like he's talking about Charles Haley? I'm not sure who I would point the finger on that, but Huntmacher's that guy that I'm really excited about if it can really click for him, because that could be a game changer.
Brian, let's flip it over to the other side of the ball with the offensive line. Our good friend Matt Verzal always talks about kind of the need for that same kind of nastiness and a little bit of a streak on the offensive line. Do you think there's any indications that that's kind of being developed at all? Because, I think there's a certain amount of ability on that line, but they're obviously missing something, whether that's schematically or in their mindset. Do you think there's a potential for that sort of attitude to develop on that side of the line?
I think they got some guys who can flip that switch. I think Neely's a guy like that. Just a great guy to talk to, but I think he loves, like, I still remember when he transferred from Colorado State in the interview. I had a lot of fun. He's one of those guys who he's like, I love football and I think people will take this the right way. The quote was basically like, it's a way to be violent and it's legal, like to hit someone and just really enjoy that. And I love hearing that whenever a guy in the trenches is coming up and talks like that. And so I think he's got that in him. And it really hurt him, as he shared with us in the spring when he met the media, how much, it cost him and the squad to be out last season with the suspension. So I think he's got a lot of pent up stuff that's going to come out in his play. So he'd be somebody I point to, but it's an interesting dynamic with the O-line because there's positive momentum because of all the stuff that's been said about Donovan Raiola from Matt Rule and how the coaches believe in him. And then there's been some good recruiting, obviously, there with Preston Tamua, this last week, adding to that. So I think it has changed the narrative a bit, but I think where it's put the narrative right now is people are like, okay, I have an open mind now. Let's see what you got. It's not necessarily that people are just going to believe everything they hear in the fall camp about this O-line, but they're going to be like, I'm going to give them a shot because I do understand the points of, last year would have been tough for any assistant coach with the offense they were running and all the turmoil in the program than to have a lot of success in what you're doing. So I think there is people who are saying, well, all right, let's see what he's really about as a coach now, because last year probably wasn't the best example.
BC, we're talking to Brian Christopherson, senior writer at Husker 24/7. BC, what's the big difference about the hype this time around with Rule versus Frost when it comes to their first recruiting class?
Well, I mean, it's got to be proven that this class is a hit too, because your question's a good one, Andrew, because we could say this every time this year. You can look at stuff on paper. Nebraska's always been pretty good on paper recruiting wise. It's just been like, can you really develop those players? And, can you get the 4-stars to play like 4-stars? You could start there, like a guy like Bryce Benhart's a guy who is a big time recruit and it's sort of stayed in place. And now you're seeing like, let's see what a new staff can do with him. Maybe they do take him to another place. So if you see some of those older guys start to pop a little bit where you're like, yeah, that guy looks a little different to me this season, and it's not the same old, that would give you a lot of encouragement, I think, about the younger players who maybe you don't even see as much. And also, I just think, you saw a little bit of a taste of it even in the spring game. Frankly, Cam Lenhart and Prince Will, even then, and I know I'm the first to say, don't make too much of that scrimmage, but those guys look better than most true freshmen that walk around here that have come through this program already when you just saw them practice and stuff like that. And to see them out there with the ones and flashing the way they were, obviously they're going to have their growing pains. But those guys were two examples from this class that are already right in front of your eyes who you're like, man, they look pretty good. I'll take my chances with them. So I think that adds to the optimism that there's really something there. And also the data points, I think, established through Rule and Evan Cooper working, Evan Cooper just identifying guys, believing in the way they recruit and the way they look at traits and how that has played out for him at Baylor and Temple. I think that past success is making people think, well, maybe there's a shot that it can really happen here because they have a little bit more proof probably than the last group did.
Brian, I tend to agree with you that the reasons for optimism are probably on the defensive side of the ball, especially. I'm excited about that defensive line kind of for the reason you talked about. If you wanted to find some optimism on the offensive side of the ball, are you looking at the offensive line kind of like you were talking about where they might be able to start performing like the recruits that they were, or is there a place that you're looking at offensively that you could maybe see some light at the end of the tunnel there?
Yeah, I would start with the O-line and the belief that they can and probably will be better to some degree. Now, how far that goes, I just think the mindset from what we've heard, it might be a little bit more of an old school attack, from this Nebraska offense. And I think people are going to have patience. I don't think it's going to be easy right away. Damon, I know, stresses this every week on the show. He really talks about the defense a lot and that having to be portable, especially early in the year while this offense kind of finds itself. And I sort of envision, and I'm wrong a lot, so probably will be this time, but I think, some of those early games, people might have to settle in for some old-fashioned Big Ten football where you have the type of offense where let's say you start a drive on the 25, but you get a couple first downs, you take 3 or 4 minutes off the clock. It's not just a 60-second possession where you give it right back and you're going to lose time of possession by 12 minutes by the end of the game. But you maybe get 2 first downs, you get to midfield and it stalls out, but you punt and you play that sort of Big Ten game, where you rely on your defense to keep field position sort of tilted your way. I could see that being a formula early on in the season if this team's going to have success. Not that there won't be some nice drives too that they finish off, but I do think just kind of reading between the lines with this offense and the way they've talked about it, I could see it being more Husker old school where it's like have a little patience in the first and second quarter if some of those drives aren't going all the way, and hope that you're kind of leaning on them. And by the fourth quarter, it has an effect like it used to, not 1995 style, but like, where you maybe 2010 style, where that group sometimes had a way of finishing people off in the fourth quarter. So hopefully they can start to get back more to that.
BC, we appreciate your time this morning. Thanks so much. We'll talk again next week.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Happy Wednesday. That is Brian Christopherson, senior writer at Husker 24/7. Coming up, Matt Foster, sports anchor at KETV. He's next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
You know, we opened the show talking a little bit about Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant and how Kobe would pick the brain of MJ. And it was kind of like MJ was his big brother in this case. And I think it's a good comp to talk about big brothers, big sisters at this moment, because their mission is to support one-to-one mentoring relationships that ignite the power and promise of youth. Bigs meet with their littles twice a month to do activities they both enjoy in the community, like getting ice cream, playing a sport, whether that's, you know, attending it or actually physically playing, like basketball outside, whatever, playing video games. You can take advantage of those opportunities and be a part of just a great organization. I mean, research has shown that positive relationships between littles and their bigs have a direct and measurable impact on the child's life. And now if you can't and don't have time to sacrifice at the moment, you can find other ways to be involved with the organization. Big Brothers, Big Sisters of the Midlands. You can donate money, donate tickets to events for matches, invite them to present to your business, you know, just a lot of different things. If you want to be involved, go to mentoromaha.org to sign up and become a big today. Let's go to the phone now and talk to Matt Foster, sports anchor at KETV, at Matt Foster TV on Twitter. Matt, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, fellas, how are we doing today?
Very good. Taking the place of AK. You got big shoes to fill. You think you're up for the task?
Sometimes pinch hitters come through, so we'll see.
Hey, and you know what? When you need that big time home run, and if you hit it out of the park, I'll make sure AK gets the message.
All right, sounds good.
Now, you're a graduate of Wisconsin. You joined KETV, the sports team, in the back end of 2019, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
You've experienced the highs and lows of Nebraska football in your time watching, well, Wisconsin win normally, and covering the team. When you look at this season in particular, though, I want you to weigh your two loves, your school pride and your community pride here. Honestly, who do you think has done it a better overall job in year one leading up to their first season in the Big Ten as a head coach? Luke Fickell or Matt Rule?
I think it's a little hard to compare in the sense that Rule has clearly had a full rebuild on his hands, where Wisconsin's been in a better spot. You know, they did win a bowl game last year, despite how rough of a season they had overall. And I think they've each done well recruiting to their strengths. Fickell wanted to come in and change Wisconsin's offense, so they go and bring in 2 transfer quarterbacks who are going to assumably change that system a bit, yet to really get a chance to see that in person or anything. Rule, obviously, I think has done a good job of just kind of flipping the narrative within the program. When you talk to a lot of the players nowadays, it kind of seems like they've put that woe is me mentality in the past, like, oh, we're almost there. It's like they're kind of done with that. Because you can't have that mentality moving forward if you actually want to win these close games. You can't keep saying we're close, we're almost there. You just have to do it.
Matt, are you prepared to live in a world where Wisconsin is possibly running like an air raid system? Like that feels between bringing in Tanner Mordecai from SMU, where he put up a ton of big numbers, and Phil Longo, who's got the background in air raid systems, most recently at North Carolina and Ole Miss. Like, have you been able to wrap your head, not that they're going to abandon the run, but have you been able to wrap your head around how differently this Wisconsin offense might look in the very near future?
Probably not completely yet, because the closest thing Wisconsin has had to that in my lifetime was when Russell Wilson was there for a season.
Sure, yeah.
And even then, that style of offense is not what they're planning on implementing under Longo and Fickell. And they didn't really show much during spring camp. They don't do like a full-on spring game like Nebraska does or anything like that. So they didn't really show a ton. So we won't really know what that's going to look like come the fall. But it's certainly going to benefit a guy like Braylon Allen, who last year with Graham Mertz's struggles, you're seeing 8-9-man boxes on a consistent basis. And it's always been a credit to Wisconsin that they've been able to run the ball that well, in spite of having, quarterbacks with ducks for arms. But yeah, Mordecai had a good, track record at SMU. Still prone to turn over the ball a little bit. Locke, coming from Mississippi State, kind of see how we adjust to different style of defense that, Big Ten teams tend to play compared to SEC. But that's just kind of the new era of college football. It's either adapt or get left behind. And you could kind of see the wheels turning at Wisconsin, that it's like they could no longer just be one-dimensional on offense and want to continue to progress and kind of stay competitive with some of the bigger programs in the country.
Matt, looking across the landscape of the Big Ten, using what you know and how things played out last year, who do you think will make the biggest leap, and who do you predict will drop off in the Big Ten this season?
So I'm going to say for biggest leap, I'm going to throw kind of an oddball team out there. I'm going to say Maryland.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah. I'm always been a firm believer that quarterback play goes a long way. And Tagovailoa is entering his, I think, maybe third season starting now. It seems like he's been there forever.
Yeah, as long as Graham Mertz was at
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
Seems like Tagovailoa in college for, yeah. I just think they have a chance to kind of continue to improve. Like, they were competitive with, like, Michigan last year for a couple quarters. I don't think it was the same Can't remember if they played Ohio State or not. But Michigan State could be another team that, just happened to have a down year last year, trying to sort things out, and having to replace Kenneth Walker was obviously no easy task. And I think you saw that. Biggest drop-off, if you can even say it, despite how bad they were last year, could be Northwestern.
So they lose that one game and go 0-12.
Well, that's a very real possibility, and there's still the chance that they lose a bunch of guys to the transfer portal.
Mm-hmm.
Because they have a 30-day window following Pat Fitzgerald stuff. So you don't even know what that roster is really going to look like when they open up camp on the first day. So, yeah, it's weird to say for a team that only won one game last year, and it didn't even come on American soil. Because I don't see Purdue really dropping off. I think Walters was a pretty solid hire for them.
Too.
So I think they'll stay probably steady at least, and I don't think we'll see the kind of offensive flair that we saw from the Boilermakers under Braum. I think Iowa obviously upgraded at quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see if Brian Ferentz can hit that point threshold or not with McNamara. And then, I would expect Illinois to, kind of continue to move forward. I think Bielema's done, and I hate to say this because Bielema was coach at Wisconsin, obviously. I think he's done a good job at kind of getting that program back on its feet.
Matt, I wanted to switch gears with you here real quick before we let you go. We've got about a minute and a half. Creighton basketball, and we're getting little video clips and things like that from summer workouts and things like that. Obviously, they bring back a couple of huge guys in Trey Alexander and Ryan Kalkbrenner, who on social media we saw nail a 3 yesterday, so I was very excited about that. But as you kind of look at this roster and the way it's constructed, and the guys coming back and the new guys coming in, what are you kind of thinking about as we are still a few months away, but I'm always thinking about college basketball? What are you thinking about might be some of the biggest differences we see between last year's team and this year's team?
Well, I think first off is the schedule. Last year's schedule was so top heavy with those big games early in Maui.
Mm-hmm.
And Mac never really got a chance to get some of those younger guys minutes. And that obviously hurt them by the end of the season. They didn't have the bench depth. You saw in that San Diego State game, which was so physical, that the starters each played at least 35 plus, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And they were exhausted. They didn't really have the legs down the stretch. So getting those newer guys minutes and kind of building that chemistry and that trust with that group and feeling comfortable to say, hey, it's, a 4 or 5 point game, but I'm comfortable having my second and third guy off the bench in the game. Whereas last year, I feel like they didn't really have that luxury. Another thing is that 4 spot is going to be so crucial to if Creighton lives up to the kind of expectations that they have for themselves,
mm-hmm.
or if they fall a little short of those. That's still going to be an ongoing battle between Trout, Jason Green, Mason Miller. And maybe they'll start to get a better sense of that after this Bahamas trip. But it's another fun season on deck for sure.
Matt, we appreciate your time this morning. Thanks so much. And let Kendi know anytime he's out that you're the guy filling the chair. We appreciate you.
Sounds good, guys. Have a good one.
That's Matt Foster, sports anchor at KETV. Awesome job. First-time guest, long-time listener.
There we go. Love it.
Long-time listener. Well, I guess the last 8 months. We will take a quick break. When we come back, we'll play 2 for You. Haven't played it in a while, but we will do that next. Give us a call, 888-638-4876 if you'd like to play 2 for You. Up next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning. Now one of Damon's favorite games and one of Shane's favorite games.
Is this the game where I have to write stuff down?
Well, maybe not so much Shane.
Yes, Shane, this would be the game.
Yes, it's 2 for you.
All right, let's do it.
Wow.
Maybe it's Ravi's favorite game too. Who knows?
Are you serious? This is the game I gotta write. I gotta go effort paper now.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, grab a notepad.
Oh, you think I would? Oh.
He's like David Spade. Maze. It's amazing. Yeah, he takes off his headphones to walk over to his backpack. You knew the game. Yeah, it's in the intro. He knew. We're playing 2 for You, presented by Dingman's Collision Center. Dingman's, your one-stop shop for all your car needs. They are family-owned and family-run local business. Been in the business for over 25 years. They've been voted Best of Omaha for nearly 24 locations throughout the metro area, along with the standalone mechanical shop. At 120th and Maple, they have a give back program too, Ravi, which allows you, if you take your car in, they'll service it, they'll give it back, but instead of you donating money, they will donate money to whichever jar you choose, which I think is pretty cool. So Digman's puts it in the hand of you. They are invested in the community, and they are invested in you, dingmans.com. Let's play 2 for You. So 888-638-4876 if you want a chance at a Hail Varsity Club gift card. We'll play the game regardless of a call. Ravi, have you played this game?
I haven't.
This is even better because Shane is...
You have to write stuff down.
Let's just say Shane is a gem.
I have to write stuff down too?
You do.
Okay.
Because you have to keep your answers.
Can I just type it?
Yes, you can type it.
Okay.
Here's how the game works. I will give 4 prompts.
Okay.
Okay. Let's just say a color in the rainbow, for example.
Oh, yeah.
You'd write down a color. Shane would write down a color.
Okay.
At the very end, we'll go back through the answers. I will give the prompt, count down from 3, and on 1, you say the answer.
Okay.
So I'll say 3, 2, 1. You guys both say answer.
Got it.
And if you get it right, good news. You move forward.
We're both
You're trying to get 2 out of 4.
So I'm trying to get the same answer that Shane's going to write
Shane's
down.
going to write
Okay,
down.
I got
He's
it.
trying to get the same answer you're going to write down.
It's like the Newlywed Game.
Similar.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
I watched a lot of TV game shows when I was a kid.
You watched a lot of Newlywed Games?
I did. It's fascinating.
Yeah, that was good stuff.
Game Show Network.
Have you
My
ever
mom
seen-
loves that.
Have you ever seen the go a little off track here?
Yeah.
The blooper answer of, I think the prompt was something like, what is like the most beautiful thing in this room or something like that. He said wife number 2. something crazy like that.
Well, as somebody-
let's just say he got hit with the cardboard.
As somebody on wife number 2, I wholeheartedly agree.
I meant more like on stage.
Oh,
the wife in number 2.
Sure.
All right, let's do this. You and Shane.
Okay.
Let's kick this thing off.
I'm ready.
You pick though, 1 or 2.
1.
Okay, here we go. Shane, ready?
Yeah, I got my pen.
Something you plug in.
Okay.
Name a face card. So a face card and a deck of cards.
Okay.
Okay.
A common pet peeve when you're in a car.
He's thinking hard over there.
Yeah, I know. I'm waiting for him to say
That's
K.
going to be tough.
That one's tricky. Yeah, I don't think we're going to get that one.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Great confidence out of this group. And the last one, a food item that starts with the letter P.
Okay.
P as in pen, which you use to write stuff down, Shane.
Like an ingredient or just any type of food?
A food item that starts with the letter P.
Any type of food, Shane.
So any type of food as a whole?
Yep.
Just
Like
something
any-
that starts with the letter P.
Something that
that's
comes in a
food
pan?
item.
Something
Are
that
you saying Pam or Pan?
Pam or Pan?
I think I can help solve this Pan debacle. All right, let's go through the answers. You ready?
Let's do it.
All right.
Ravi, how you feeling?
I feel great.
I don't think you do. All right, here we go. Question or prompt number 1. Something you plug in. 3, 2, 1.
Phone.
The right answer.
Nice.
Name a face card. 3, 2, 1.
King. Boom.
Woo! That one had me nervous. Not going to lie. I thought Shane was going to go Jack.
Love it. Good job, Shane.
All right, 2 out of 4. So you
We won already.
You're productive in the game.
We
but
won already.
This is where you try to go 4 for 4.
All
Because
right.
if a listener was on the phone, they could double down with these answers.
Ooh.
Go from 10
Nah, I
to
wouldn't
20
double
to
down on
40.
this one.
A common pet peeve when you're in a car. 3, 2, 1.
Singing. What did you say?
Singing.
No, you didn't. What'd you say? Show me your answers, Spanish.
It's over here. You can't see it.
I can't see it.
What was your answer?
I was putting a pet peeve of mine as I was just saying no somebody that not turn their turn signals on.
Okay, that's a pet peeve.
Okay.
That's
I
a
was
long
thinking
one.
like in a road trip, like on a road trip,
Uh-huh.
people in your car, not other people.
Yeah,
on
I
the
would have probably
road.
said traffic. As a
Okay.
pet peeve when I'm in the car.
So my head was in a different space.
Yeah.
I was thinking road trip, multiple people in your car.
And then the last one, a food item that starts with the letter P. 3, 2, 1.
Pizza.
Thank goodness.
Let's
I
go.
thought Shane was going to say like paprika or something like
3
that.
out of 4, Shane.
Nice. Okay,
Love
nice
it.
work. Nice work.
Love it.
All right. So now you have a good,
Yeah.
you have
I feel good.
your feet in the sand.
Yeah.
You're good to go.
Yeah, I feel
now
good.
we run it back.
Uh-oh.
Ravi, you want to play with me?
All
Or
right.
you want to play with Shane? You get to choose now.
Because
you could run it back with Shane and try to go 4 for 4.
I'm feeling good about the mental wavelength
chemistry?
Shane and I are on right now, so
I'm
let's
cool.
go with Shane.
I'm cool
Yeah.
with it. Everybody loves Shane.
Yeah.
No.
Come
All
on,
right, Shane, you got to write it down again.
You got it.
Okay.
I believe in you.
All right, here's the last round. 2 for you, presented by Dingman's Collision Center.
Okay.
A state capital.
Okay.
A president within the years of 1950 and 1970.
Okay.
Something you laugh at.
Okay.
Okay.
And a kicker in the NFL.
Hold on.
I love the deep breath that Shane
The sigh.
just exhaled.
God, I can't think of a single one.
I can't either, so I think that counts as getting it right.
Guys,
Why
come
am I
on.
blanking on every kicker's name?
It's one kicker. That's it.
I want to say Janikowski, but he doesn't kick anymore.
That is correct. He does not.
Florida State great, Janikowski.
Ray Guy.
Another guy that doesn't kick anymore, Roberto Aguayo from Florida State. We can keep going through kickers that don't play, or we can do a kicker that actually plays. There are 30 of them.
I think this guy still plays.
This is going to be an awesome answer. Shane, what do you got down
I
there?
don't
You got
have an answer.
You have to write something down, man. Just write down a fake name. Maybe it's right.
Okay.
All right.
So we're not going to get 4.
All right. Here we go. This is amazing. Guys, you guys don't realize how much I love kickers.
I
and how
know.
much I hate you all right
I
now.
totally you said that. I was like, I can't think of a single active kicker.
I even had you look up kicking stats.
I know.
today.
I know. But I was looking at historical kicking stats.
That's true.
So all the names in my head are like Vinatieri, Vanderjack. Like I've got, I went Morton Anderson for a second.
Yeah, Morton Anderson.
You guys are. Wow.
And then I was like, wait a second, who is a single active kicker?
and now that I think about it, I said a kicker in the NFL. I didn't say like right now.
I just assumed you meant active.
Yeah.
So
Okay, here we go. A state capital. 3, 2, 1.
Lincoln. Boom.
Okay, off to a good start. A president within the years of 1950 and 1970. 3, 2, 1.
Kennedy.
Yep.
Nice.
Count it. That's who I would have said.
Yeah.
But I went to Kennedy for high school, so it made sense. It was on the brain. Something you laugh at. 3, 2, 1.
Comedy.
Jokes. I think that counts. I'm going to count it. I'm counting it. Shane hit the bell. He's counting it.
No, Shane's a part of the game. It's up to me.
Count it. Hit the bell.
Comedy and a joke.
I said jokes in general.
Okay.
I'm counting it.
Jokes are comedy.
Yeah. And comedy is filled with jokes.
Well, it's a stretch, but I'll give it to you because it's the same premise.
Yes.
Okay.
It's like JFK and Kennedy. Same thing.
No, that's no.
Ding. Hit the bell.
Completely
Hit the bell.
different. All right, the last one and the most.
I don't feel good here.
entertaining of the
I don't
bunch.
feel good here.
A kicker in the NFL. 3, 2, 1.
Carlson.
Gould.
Gould is a kicker.
Yes. Is he still there?
He is.
I couldn't remember if he were
played for the 49ers.
right. That's what I thought, but I
Right.
couldn't remember if he retired or not.
And
Because
Carlson is a kicker, Shane.
is that Seahawks?
Is
That's the Raiders.
Who does Daniel Carlson kick for?
Raiders.
Is that who he?
Was he with the Seahawks, or am I just making that up?
Jason Myers is with the Seahawks, and Daniel Carlson is still with the Raiders.
All right. Well, there you go.
You guys both picked active kickers, so well done there.
I think that's a win in and of itself, considering both of us were like,
Yeah,
wait.
guess what? Shane, let me hear it. Let me hear it.
I might have stalled to
Go
try
off.
and get that.
Oh, yeah. Now we're not going off the rails and squealing tires. I get it. Okay. 3 out of 4. Nice work.
I'm just saying 6 out of 8. That's pretty good.
Yep. It
6
is.
out of 8.
It is.
We're on the
Even though
same
it
page,
could have been
Shane.
5 out of 8.
Well,
I was generous.
well.
We're just talking to Louie Vaquer next.
Clear.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Hey, welcome back. We will continue our schedule breakdown of Nebraska's 2023 schedule with Louie in a few moments. Talk about Northwestern. All the new stuff that has come out about the program in the past few days, few hours even. And then we will get into what they'll actually look like on the field, because even Matt Foster said something that was pretty shocking, that he thinks they could be the team that falls off this year. And people probably squint and tilt their head at that like, can they? Can they get even worse? No,
I think they could be.
They probably could. But before we go anywhere, let me take a moment and talk about another one of our great sponsors, Dyer Law. If you have been hurt in a personal injury accident, you can count on the Dyer Law team to provide you with a helping hand when you need it, no matter what you're dealing with. Call the Dyer Law team at 402-393-7529 or visit Dyer.law to chat with trusted professionals about your personal injury claim. That's Dyer, D-Y-E-R, .law. As we look at Northwestern, though, as a whole, here's like some basic things.
Mm-hmm.
So since winning the Big Ten West in 2020,
Mm-hmm.
they are 4-20 and have just 2 conference victories.
Yeah.
As we know, one was to Nebraska last year.
Mm-hmm.
Northwestern has 3 or fewer wins in 3 of its last 4 seasons.
Yes.
They're 1-8 in Big Ten play in all 3 of those seasons.
Not great.
Not great at all. And it all seemed to go downhill after Mark Hankwitz retired.
Yes.
So Northwestern allowed 30 points or more 15 times over the last 2 years since Hankwitz was done and lost all 15. The 5 years from 2016 to 2020, only 14 times. That's more years, Ravi. If you can count.
Yeah, I'm not great with math, but that does add up.
Now it's time for David Braun to come in and take over. He's from North Dakota State. Good defensive coordinator, came in to run the defense, get them back to the prowess that Hankwitz had them at. But now he's in charge of the whole thing.
Yeah.
With everything going down with Northwestern, and there's a lot to recover from. And it's not just the hazing allegations. Let's start with just this team.
The football of it.
Yeah, the product that you'll see on the field. Offensively, this team averaged 13 points a game last fall.
Yes.
13.8 to be exact.
That's very bad.
They failed to score 10 points in 6 of their last 8 games.
Iowa thinks that's bad offense.
Yeah. Can't believe their OC kept his job.
Yeah.
But who knows? Who'd want to take over?
And Fitzgerald came out and said, before he got fired, obviously, the only reason he did keep his job is he didn't want to make changes on both sides of the ball in the same year.
Right.
Like, that's the only reason that guy has a job.
This offense finished 128th nationally in scoring, 128th or 123rd in yards per play, and 130th in turnovers.
That's quite bad.
Last year, they were painfully inconsistent at the quarterback spot.
Yeah.
Now, some of that was because of injury, but they also had way too many turnovers to count.
Mm-hmm.
But now you get a guy by the name of Ben Bryant out of Cincinnati, a pretty good transfer, a proven guy. Phil Steele in the magazine, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago with Phil Steele, and this is something we've been referencing a lot throughout this process. He made the prediction that Ben Bryant's going to be the starter day one.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's right. I know Brennan Sullivan's back.
Ryan Helinski's back.
Yeah, he's Brennan Sullivan's been kind of fighting for the last couple years to maybe get that job. I think it's going to be Ben Bryant, though. I think that's correct.
Cam Porter, can he recapture form after the ACL injury?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's taking over for Hull. Should be okay. I think offensively at the running back spot, that will be the team's strength early on in the season.
That's a relative thing, though, right? Because it's the strength amongst
a lot of Big Ten
bunch
teams.
of weaknesses.
Right.
So it's strong. It's probably the strong part for Northwestern. I don't know that compared to the rest of the Big Ten, it's going to be particularly strong.
That's a great point. Good point to make. Just for this team, though,
Yes.
offensively, that's where they'll find their strength.
I think so.
Now, their receiving core is weird. Cam Johnson comes over from Vanderbilt. He played there from 2019 to 2021, and then he also played a stint at Arizona State. But the majority was at Vanderbilt, where he had 120 receptions. They have Bryce Kurtz and Jacob Gill. They're pegged for bigger roles. They got A.J. Henning from Michigan. So they have bodies. It's just a matter of are they going to be consistent enough?
You really only have Johnson as anyone with any sort of productive track record in college in any school. Henning is a speedster, just crazy fast, but hardly any production at all, right? So you look at him and you say, yeah, there's potential there. That's probably a guy it makes sense taking a shot on if you're Northwestern, but very little in the way of actual knowns in that room.
And then on the offensive line, they lost, of course, Peter Skoronski, and he was just an absolute terror.
Yeah, I mean, 11th overall pick.
And that's why, right? It's 100% why. Now, they lost their center and right tackle, too, so you would think, gosh, this offensive line is going to be pretty bad. But they do return their left guard and left tackle. And you know, Caleb Tierman, he could be really good. He could be a Sunday guy.
Yeah.
He's somebody that I think puts you in a spot where you say we're not totally screwed at this position group.
Hopefully, yeah. You mentioned left guard Josh, I don't know how to say it, Preby.
That's what I would guess.
That's how I've he potentially has he's an interior lineman, so he's probably not going to go super high, but he's got some pro potential as well. But yeah, there's not a ton of bright spots here, and I still don't expect that to be a very good unit in general. I mean, it might be one of their better units, but again, kind of like the running backs,
We're talking about Northwestern.
pretty bad overall.
And before we get into the schedule literal breakdown for Northwestern,
Mm-hmm.
before we get into where they rank among Big Ten teams, let's talk about the defense quickly. They returned 5 starters. They were the worst run defense in the Big Ten last year. They lost their star of the unit to the Colts in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the defensive line, they do have Najee Story and Sean McLaughlin, who showed promising signs last year, but not enough to really get you excited about this year. McLaughlin, more of the veteran presence in that group.
Mm-hmm.
At linebacker, if we're going to pick strengths again, I think this is where they could find early strength. Bryce Gallagher and Xander Mueller are back, who I think, if I am correct stat-wise, they were 1 and 2 in tackles last year for this team.
Yep.
And the secondary replaced well. You know, the room only lost a couple, but grabbed an experienced safety and Jeremiah Lewis in the transfer portal. Azima should be fully healthy.
Yeah.
Rod Hurd is a vet. So defensively, when you look at the whole thing, you're kind of like, okay,
they could be okay.
That's where I think Northwestern should be.
They could be okay. Yeah. That is.
And I think that's a lot of credit to Braun.
I agree. Now, just yesterday, they lost Nigel Glover, who was their best recruit from last year, a 4-star linebacker who was probably going to contribute, right? He was probably going to play, probably not start because, as you said, that linebacker unit returned all 3 starters and probably was the strength of their offense or their defense. But he was probably going to have a rotational role, probably contribute on special teams as well. He is gone. He is not going to be part of the program. So as we talked with Matt Foster, we're probably going to see some attrition over the next 3 weeks or so as that 30-day timetable starts to clear out. But that's the first one, and it's a big one.
Let's ask the expert now. Louie Vaccaire joins the show, publisher and managing editor of WildcatReport.com, at Wildcat Report on Twitter. We've talked to him a lot lately, and Louie, we appreciate your time once again. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, so before we get into the new, well, let's get into this first, and then we'll get into the team, the on-field product, because I kind of want to share duties here because we didn't really get to ask you a little bit about some of those things. Let's start here. So Northwestern launching 2 reviews into athletics. One will examine how Northwestern detects threats to its athletes and implements accountability within the athletic department. The other will assess the culture of Northwestern athletics and its relationship to the academic mission. What do you think the main point of doing this is? Just to say you did it, to ensure that accountability, to give the public something after an investigation when people and the media found themselves searching for answers? Just where does the athletic department go from here?
Well, I think it's for all those things, right? I mean, it's certainly a PR move, definitely. I don't think there's any questions about that. Northwestern has been getting dragged through the mud for the last couple of weeks here. I think it's to prevent things in the future. I mean, to me, when something like of this nature happens, like so this one happens to be hazing scandal, Northwestern, the school involved is going to be completely focused on that, at least, for the immediate future. That is going to be the focus. It's not going to happen. I guarantee you that. So they put in the monitors in the locker room, the independent monitor that doesn't report to the head coach. They're going to have this detecting threats. The school, the players and the staff are going to go through training and all that kind of stuff. It's a major focus. Some of that is PR, but that this is going to be the total focus going forward of the athletic department to ensure that this doesn't happen again. So I think, all those reasons you listed, it's all part of why they're doing it for sure.
Louie, between the football program, obviously everything they're going through, the baseball program's going through it now as well. Obviously that's less of a spotlight just because of what sport it is and the time of year. Have we not talked about Derek Gregg enough and kind of, I mean, how is he still having a job, I guess, is my question. How is he still there?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. We certainly have been talking about that a lot on my message boards, I can tell you that. And I've talked to many, many parents and they are furious. And a lot of it is directed at Dr. Gregg, who, like looking at the baseball scandal, he's the guy that hired Foster as the coach. It was his first hire as a Northwestern athletic director. And he, from what I understand, coaches kind of gave him a list, and he sort of went rogue and hired this guy when he was warned not to. I think Foster's reputation was well known in the baseball community, and Gregg hired him anyway. And then you have on the football side, while he didn't hire Fitz or anything like that, this did happen under his watch. And then, as you know, he was overseas when it was all breaking. And when they fired Fitzgerald, he talked to the team via Zoom call and didn't take any questions. And parents really were furious about that. That's one thing. There's a lot of parents and players that don't agree that Fitzgerald should be fired. Some do. There's and how long, maybe they should have given him a year. If they would have came out and given him a harder punishment initially, maybe he wouldn't have gotten fired. So there's all kinds of opinions about that, but it seems everybody's united that Northwestern administration really bungled this. They mishandled it from the outset. There's a lot of anger toward Gregg, and even President Michael Schill, who, came out with this 2-week suspension, and it looked to me like they were just going to try to sweep this under the rug in mid-July, and then the next day the Daily Northwestern story broke, and it just exploded in their faces, and then 2 days later they fire them. So it was the same set of the same information he looked at went from 2 weeks to termination in a matter of 3 days.
Well, and you get that 2-week window. If we look at 2 weeks after, like you were talking about, the story comes out. And we had a conversation last week about, okay, there's one person that says, oh, this stuff was happening, and you have players defending Coach Fitzgerald. Now, just yesterday or 2 days ago, one of the two, we had more information come out on Northwestern. Now those 8 names have come out and said, like, hey, we're taking this. We're taking this to court against Northwestern. Just overall, how do you think the athletic department recovers from something like this?
Well, they got to do damage control first, and I think they're going to be paying a lot with these lawsuits. There's also Fitz's lawsuit, right? So he's suing the university for breach of contract. And so, initially they agreed to this 2-week suspension, and then he got fired 3 days later. They didn't, inform him about it or anything like that. So he's ticked off. You've got the players now are starting to sue the university and Fitz for the hazing that occurred. The Tribune came out yesterday. They had a player came out and put his name to it. Lloyd Yates, a former quarterback within the program. Well, a quarterback and wide receiver. He moved wide receiver later, but he came out and confirmed all of these allegations. And now they've got 12 players now that are suing the university. So, I mean, it's going to be a mess, and it's going to get worse before it gets better, in my opinion, because they've got the locker room. I mean, you really think about these kids right now. Now they got they lost Fitz, and they got former players suing coaches in the university, and they got an interim coach. They don't know if he's going to stay on after the year. It is just it is a nightmare. I bet you they can't wait to just start playing football so that, and just end the talk a little bit.
Well, I'm sure media days not going to be overly fun for this football team next week. I mean, you lost your top commit in 23. You lost your top commit at least in 24. He's looking around now. He's shopping his options. I asked about recovery of the athletic department. What about just this football team and the state that they're currently in with their on-field product? And now with all of the stuff going on behind the scenes, how does this football team recover? And when do you envision them finally getting competitive again?
Yeah. So, get competitive again. You got to remember too, this is a team that went 4-20 over the last 2 years. They were 1-11 last year, had 11-game losing streak. It's if you kind of look at it from afar, here's Northwestern just devastated by the loss of a 1-11 head coach. It's almost kind of dumb. Because, he was an icon and a legend and all that kind of stuff. But when you look at it that way, it is sort of humorous. But they lost, they've lost 4 decommits in their 2024 class now. We have had 1 transfer so far. So we'll see what that happens. I think, for timing, it's really bad if you want to transfer, right? I mean, the season's like 6 weeks away, a little over 6 weeks away. I don't know how many players are going to find landing spots. I think after the season is when you'll really see some attrition. You'll see players leave the program once they figure out who their permanent coach is going to be, and they make all those changes, and whether there's going to be new systems, who the new coaches are, assistants, and everything. So that's when I think you'll see maybe more at that time. But this is going to be, like I said, they're already in the gutter. And they got a interim head coach who's in a tough spot. David Braun just got here 6 months ago. He came from FCS, North Dakota State. He's never been a head coach. He's never been at the FBS level. So he's got to be drinking from the fire hose right now too. It's a difficult time. I do think, this may galvanize the locker room. It's going to be us against them. Nobody believes in us. They have zero expectations. When you have one win, the bar is pretty low. So I think that would help them a little bit mentally, but it's going to be some tough sledding in the Big Ten, I think, this year.
Louie, talking big picture and kind of long-term view here, Northwestern, obviously a very proud institution from an academic side of things. This is kind of a black eye for the entire university. How much do you think they might, I don't know if this is the right way to put it, but sacrifice winning in the football program to sort of save face or restore their reputation in the short term, rather than try and quick fix the athletic part of it? Does that make sense?
A little bit. I mean, I don't know. That's one thing, but I don't think that losing would solve anything. I think will there be maybe a de-emphasis of athletics? They're going to implant a monitor in there, and I'm sure they're going to crack down on things really hard. But Northwestern is still, Pat Fitzgerald. I know right now he's his entire legacy is stained by this, and deservedly so. He made a mistake here, and whether you believe Fitz knew or not, in my opinion, he's accountable for that program. He should have known, and that's I don't think that's disputable. But they did a lot of things the right way. Fitz did graduate darn near 100% of his players for 17 years. They were always number one or number two in the APR, the academic measure by the NCAA. They emphasized things, the correct things. They did things the right way. Now this was a blind spot. I think he made a mistake by not, policing this a little bit more. And I think that maybe his leaders too let him down, and that it didn't seem like anybody went to him. The players I talked to all said if someone came to Fitz with this, he would have solved the problem. He would have eliminated it. Their confidence of that. And so I think that the leadership, the captains, didn't bring this to his attention and say, hey, this is wrong. This needs to be stopped. And I believe he would have done that too. So Fitz did do the right thing for a long time, and I think the priorities of the programs were in the right place. This was something that happened under his watch. It cost him his job, but it doesn't negate all the good things he did over his career.
Louie, I want to change gears here quickly. This one, just the last one from me. I want to talk about this season, what actually we'll see on the field. You're welcome. The quarterback situation, because this is an interesting one. Last year, a lot of inconsistency. The turnovers were a problem. Injury issues appeared. But you add Ben Bryant. Northwestern adds Ben Bryant from Cincinnati. Does that just add competition to the room, or do you believe we'll see him suit up first in week one?
I think he's the heavy favorite. Yeah, they will have a quarterback battle, I think, this fall, but I think Ben Bryant is probably going to be the guy that emerges as the starter. He's the guy that has, 2 years as a starter under his belt, both at Eastern Michigan and Cincinnati. This will be his 6th year of football. He's a veteran college football player, and that's the number, you brought it up. The number one issue they had last year was turnovers. They turned it over 31 times during the year. They were dead last, 131st in the country in turnover margin. I think if they just take care of the football, they'll win a few more games. They really threw away a lot of ball games last year, and they did add some some speed too. They got AJ Henning, who has some big play potential from Michigan in special teams and as receiver. They did some things through the portal to, especially at defensive tackle, to add some depth there. But I think, that quarterback position, I think it's going to be Ben Bryant, and if he just takes care of the ball and provides that steady leadership, a lot like Peyton Ramsey did as a grad transfer back in 2020 when they won the West. I think that they will be a much more efficient team, and they're going to win a few more ball games than they did last year.
Louie, about a minute left here with you. In terms of expectations, you said just by cleaning some things up, you think they can win a few more games. What would be an optimistic view of what this season, just from a win-loss standpoint, could be for Northwestern?
Yeah, I think, their schedule sets up pretty well. They open with Rutgers. They have two very winnable non-conference games with UTEP and Howard. Howard's a little bit later in the year.
Mm-hmm.
And, if they can steal one more win, maybe two at the most, they could be a 4-win team or something like that. I think, you ask for the most optimistic. I think if they made a bowl game or something like that, I think David Braun could be the Big Ten Coach of the Year.
Right. I mean, really.
Pretty astounding, really. But I think if they win just, 3-4 games or something like that, I think would be considered a success for this season.
Now, Louie, the over-under is set at 3.5. Or would you take the over or the under?
3.5, I would probably go under.
All right, you're with the consensus. -160 for under 3.5. Louie Vicaire, we appreciate your time this morning. Thanks so much, and we'll talk again soon.
All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me.
Thank you. That is the publisher and managing editor of WildcatReport.com.
By the way,
Louie Vicaire.
I would be surprised if they brought any players next week.
Oh, yeah. Interesting.
Ooh. Something to think about.
I'm serious. I would be shocked if they had players.
Something to think about.
That is interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
We'll take a break. We'll give our open picks, and we'll finish up Northwestern thoughts next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
All right, welcome back. Before we give our picks for the Open Championship, which we do for the major golf events, let's just one final time go back on our Northwestern conversation of the upcoming season, because something Louie Vaquer said at the very end of that was interesting to me, because the over-under was set at 3.5, and he alluded to the fact that I could see him getting to 4. He's like, I probably would rest at 3, but I could see him getting to 4. And Ravi and I looked at each other like, I don't think so.
No.
I don't see them winning more than 2 games this year. If that,
I don't.
They may not win a game this year.
Yeah, it's pretty tough sledding for them. Honestly, the one game that I think...
Yeah, go through the schedule here.
The one game that I think they could actually win is when they play Howard.
Which is like week 5?
On October 7th. Yeah, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's week 6. But so they start at Rutgers. Listen, that's probably their most winnable Big Ten game. I wouldn't count on it, right?
Especially with Greg Schiano at that.
Yeah, like they're going to be... Rutgers is going to be well coached, and don't forget, Rutgers at 4-8 won 4 times as many games as Northwestern did last year. Then you've got UTEP, who is pretty functional under Dana Dimmel. Returns their quarterback.
You had said 15 starters.
Yeah, 15 starters coming back. That feels like a loss to me.
And they were a 5-7 win.
Yeah, they weren't terrible. They weren't terrible. They were 7-6 the year before that. Pretty functional under Dana Dimmel. Then at Duke, that's a loss. Minnesota, that's a loss. Penn State, that's a loss.
Even though they only lost by, 10 points last year to Penn State?
Right, yeah. Howard's the one where you look at and say maybe they could win it. But honestly, they'd probably be better off if Howard came earlier in the season. Because if you start the season 0-5, you probably have guys packing it in by that point,
Howard
right?
could be 2-3 at that point.
Right, and you could have guys, after you start off poorly, guys could be checking out. They could be choosing, hey, I'm going to redshirt so I can go transfer.
For the sake of this, let's say they win that game.
So that's 1.
So they're 1-5 at this point.
At
1-6, excuse me.
At Nebraska has to
1-7.
be a loss. Maryland's going to be a loss. Iowa in Chicago is going to be a loss. At Wisconsin is a loss. Purdue's a loss. At Illinois is a loss. I cannot see more than 3.
If they steal a Big Ten game,
it's probably at Rutgers right out of the gate.
Or it's against Purdue at home.
Yes.
But those are the only 2 that I could roughly
They're not getting
see.
both.
No.
They're not getting both. I can't imagine under a Matt Rule coach team, Nebraska losing at home to Northwestern.
Well,
I
they
just
won't onside.
don't see it. Listen, I said last year, despite how bad I thought Northwestern was going to be, I was like, Pat Fitzgerald is a better coach than Scott Frost.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel good about them winning that game,
right?
Despite the talent gap and everything there. So, but I don't see a way, because Nebraska would have to beat themselves, and I don't think that's something we're going to see from Matt Rule teams. I could be wrong. We don't know yet. We haven't seen anything, but I'm not giving Northwestern a chance in any game. Honestly, I don't even think Purdue's a realistic option. I think it's just
I don't either.
Rutgers, maybe UTEP, because it's early. Maybe they're not, whatever.
Sure.
And then Howard. Those are the only three I can even sort of see wins.
So the fact that the over-under is set at 3.5.
I am hammering that under.
Which is minus 160 currently on DraftKings. And if you want to do a degenerate bet with me, I'm going to throw in the Rams under 6.5 because I've been wanting to, but I didn't want to play an under. But if I'm going to do an under in Northwestern, I might as well do
Let's do a parlay.
bet, and we're going to do a parlay.
I'm gonna look at some of the other college football over unders.
I mean, just look at this though. This parlay of Rams under 6.5 and Northwestern is plus 203.
That's solid.
That's good value.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
Those two picks.
Especially considering how much of a lock it seems like the Northwestern one is.
And the Rams are minus 115. They're minus 105 to hit the over.
Do you dream about betting?
Do I dream? No. No, I dream like
typically
tigers.
you dream about like things you'd like to do or whatever. But I mean, because betting seems to be just in your nature, in your blood. It's just like, I mean,
I'm like Michael Jordan, man. I'm competitive. That's all it is. It's not an addiction.
It's not an addiction. He's just competitive.
All right, let's stay with betting and do these picks, Shane. So, as you know, we take two favorites and a long shot.
Okay.
So, Ravi, I'll inform you of this. So, the two favorites have to be above. Well, they don't have to be. Like, you could take two long shots if you want. I would tell you to vote against that option.
Sure.
Because we'll take the cumulative score of the golfers in the very end. If they miss the cut on Saturday, they're out. You take the cut score on Saturday and Sunday to add to your player score.
Yep.
And then that affects your total at the end of it all.
Okay.
What I do here is I go online and I do list randomizer. And I'm going to type in our names.
Randomizer. Got it.
I'll type in yours first.
Yep.
Shane's always last.
Shane second
Putting
because
Shane
he's let's just say hot and bothered. I was going to say the other one, but I think I got yelled at for that one last time. And I'll put me third. And then all I do is hit go here. And boom, there's the roster.
All right. We've got Andrew.
Shane, guess what? I'm first.
Andrew's first.
You should have went last.
You're second. I'm third. Let's do it.
I'm always.
Are we doing snake?
And it is a snake draft.
Perfect.
So
I love going
back to
third.
back.
I love going third. Snake draft.
Always got to be in the middle. Always got to be the Oriole.
You're always the one complaining. All right. Let's do these picks. So to kick things off, I know it's going to come as a shock to everybody. I will take the best player in the world from an analytical perspective. That is Scotty Scheffler, Andrew's first pick in the Open Championship draft. Oh, I forgot to talk about the stakes. The stakes, if you win, the other two have to buy you breakfast.
Okay, so
and I'm already even on Shane after he blew us out in the Masters.
Garbage.
So do I get two different breakfasts, or you guys just split the cost of one breakfast?
Breakfast.
Okay.
Yep.
Deal. I'm
That's
in.
how it works.
I love it.
All right, so I took Scotty Scheffler. Shane, are you taking your boy?
I'm taking my guy.
John Rahm for Shane.
John CD-ROM.
Listen, I'll just sit down here gratefully as Rory McIlroy falls in my lap.
That is true.
I'll take it.
Okay, so you're taking
He's the
Rory,
betting favorite. I'll take him.
Right? You're taking Rory, and you get another pick here, Ravi.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Brooks Koepka as my second. As my second.
I always like Brooks.
I do too.
Good competitive player.
Yeah.
But although he's pretty mad at what's his name for leaving his live team. Is that Fitzpatrick?
Yeah. Yeah.
How about you play? All right, Shane.
I'm going to go with Victor. He had a top 5 finish last year in this event.
Hovland?
Yep.
You son of a nutcracker. Are you kidding?
No.
Is that your guy?
Oh, my. Yeah, I thought I could steal him.
You thought wrong.
Unbelievable. I got to reassess.
But you only got 2 minutes here.
Yeah,
we got it going.
Well, normally you get what's it? You get 2 minutes on the fantasy football.
Yeah, you're on the clock.
Too. Unbelievable. He takes Hovland from underneath me.
Your guy.
They'll trade you Hovland for Scotty.
I'll punch you in the face.
Hey, no workplace violence here, guys.
I'll send a hippo your way.
What's our cut line?
What? Oh, for the long shot?
Yep.
3,000.
3,000. No, it's 4,000.
Oh, it's 4,000?
Plus 4,000.
You told me 3,000.
Did I?
Yeah, you did. Ruins everything. I'm just kidding.
Okay, I mean, if we want to make it 3, if I said 3, I'll own
My
that.
guy's above 4 anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Okay, well, then we'll keep it with 4.
All right.
So we're going 3?
4.
We're going 4.
I want to go 3.
Well, you took Victor Hovland from me, so we're doing 4. I will take Patrick Cantley. I'm not happy about it, but I'll take Cantley. I think he could bust out this week.
Not happy about that.
Nope. And then my long shot above 4, give me Max Homa. Market is totally undervaluing.
Chilling with my Homa.
And he's just got a lot of upside. So the market is against him because he's had long-term struggles in major events. And he's just been playing really well. 5 cuts in his last 7. Gives good potential for a higher ceiling. Give me Homa.
Shano?
I don't know now. I mean,
Good.
Yeah, I know, right? You can go before me if you want to, Ravi.
What? Yeah, let me just Baltimore Ravens this pick.
I'm serious, you can. You can do it. Go ahead, then I'll pick one.
All right, I don't have a good reason for this, and I'll tell you my reasoning. I like an actor of this same name, so I'm going to go with Adam Scott.
All right. Good long shot pick.
My Parks and Rec guy, Adam Scott.
Not to be confused with Michael Scott.
Different guy.
Different guy. Great guy, though.
Terrific manager.
I'm like Michael Scott sometimes where I start a sentence and I just try to figure it out along the way.
I think that's a lot of sports talk radio is just starting a sentence and figuring out where you're going on the way.
All right, Shane, and your pick is what as we wind down these final 30 seconds before we talk to Ryan Ballengee?
I don't know. Gosh.
You got this.
I'll just go with Bryson. Did you say Bryson already?
No, Bryson is available.
DeChambeau is available.
God. What a bunch of garbage.
You hate it? You hate the pick?
Don't feel good about it.
Well,
Listen.
hey, if I gave you 3,000, who would you have taken?
Can I take 3,000?
Go for it.
All right,
Okay.
we'll let you take it. If you take Morikawa, though, I'm not letting
Nope,
you
I
take
want
it.
Jordan.
Spieth, yeah.
Okay.
That's what I was going to take if it was 3,000. But then I was like, Adam Scott, my guy. Ben
Okay.
Wyatt.
So Scheffler, Cantley, Homa for me. Shane has Rahm, Hovland, DeChambeau, or Spieth because he forgoed his pick and we're giving him Spieth. And then Rory, Brooks, and Adam Scott.
Love it.
Robbie. Those are the picks.
I love my draft.
The Open. Here I go. I'm going to start parlaying the 3 now. To the border I go. But first, we're talking to Ryan Ballengee. He's next.
Clear.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Welcome back, Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Ravi, Lulla, Andrew Rogers. Hold it. Back with you. Live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. Happy to wind this thing down with Ryan Ballengee. Talking a little golf, the Open Championship. He's the owner of Golf News Net at Ryan Ballengee on Twitter, Ballengee. Ryan, good morning.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Hey, thanks for joining us again. We just went through our plays. I'm going to read you off the three for each, and you let me know who you feel most confident in, as if you took a cumulative score of these three golfers for the event. Okay?
All right.
So my picks were Scotty Scheffler, Patrick Cantlay, and Max Homa as my long shot. Shane took John Rahm, Victor Hovland, and Jordan Spieth as his long shot. And that's, of course, him making that ding. And Ravi took Rory, Brooks, and Adam Scott as his long shot. Who do you feel most comfortable with? Whose grouping is going to take home breakfast this time around?
It's a good. Oh man, that's a tough one. Scheffler's so good.
Yeah, he is.
Surprised, but Homa has no top tens in a major. Rahm and Hovland, I love this week. Spieth's creativity is excellent. He's been flying under the radar a lot of the year. But then you got Rory and Brooks. Man, those are two great. Oh gosh, that's hard. That's really hard.
Maybe even just base it off of who you think's going to win.
Who was Rob's third guy again?
He had Adam Scott.
All right, I'm going to go with Rob.
Oh, Ravi taking it home.
Nailed it.
Nice work. Okay. Now let's get back to business, Ryan, since you didn't pick me. So the Royal Liverpool has out of bounds everywhere. Let's talk a little bit about course condition here and things that could get in the way. How cautious do you expect players to be off the tee, especially if winds start to pick up?
Yeah, that's going to be the story, right? I mean, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we're supposed to get some pretty decent wind and a little bit lay down on Sunday, but you're going to have a consistent 10 to 15. But those guys aren't worried about 10 to 15 mile per hour winds. They're worried about gusts of 20, 25, 30 miles per hour if they kick up. And if that happens, you're going to play a whole lot more cautiously. You're going to play away from internal out of bounds. You're going to play away from hazard type stuff. I mean, the thing to avoid here more than anything else, prevalent on pretty much every hole is bunkers. Bunkers will kill you on this golf course.
Mm-hmm.
That is the one defense other than internal out of bounds. But I think Scotty Scheffler put it really well leading into this tournament. Said, the way that Tiger played this place in 2006, where he hit driver just one time, you can't do that now because the game has changed, the equipment's better, and there's somebody in this field that's going to be able to confidently hit driver all over the place. And so you've got to be able to put the driver in play. So, yeah, they might try to play away from hazards. They might try to play away from OB, but ultimately these guys are going to have to find a way to put driver in play. So that's the challenge this week. I think that is a little bit different from maybe the other times we've seen Royal Liverpool in the last 20 years.
Ryan, when you think about all those things you just mentioned, the course conditions, the bunkers, the out of bounds, or I guess who in this field do you look at as perhaps uniquely qualified or able to navigate those things maybe better than some of their peers?
Man, I think it starts with great driving of the golf ball. I think that's going to be very strongly rewarded this week. And so you think about the three best players in the world, right? I mean, at least as far as the official world golf ranking goes, you think about Rory McIlroy, who's driving the ball great. Scotty Scheffler drives the ball great. John Rahm drives the ball great. I mean, there's a reason they're the three best players in the world. They get the ball out and play, and they kind of avoid a lot of the muck. And they don't need driver. I think Min-Woo Lee's a really interesting longer shot play because he's even more powerful than those guys. So if there's anyone who's willing to attempt the Tiger strategy to avoid bunkers, it could be Min-Woo Lee. Not to say he's going to, but he's a very aggressive player. But he could if he felt the need. It could be really interesting. Brooks Koepka drives the ball extremely well. I mean, he gets the ball in play where it needs to be, makes him particularly dangerous. I think the best players in the world right now are really typically the best drivers of the golf ball who then can make something of the opportunities they create because of how far they hit the ball. So I think good drivers are going to be rewarded this week. That's not to say you can't have someone like Brian Harmon who's not as long hitter as those guys, not even close, and can't be successful. I just think you're going to have a whole lot easier time in any condition if you can put the ball out there confidently.
Ryan, if you're mapping out who you like this week, who, if you were a betting man, you'd like to bet on, are you primarily looking for accuracy off the tee, solid mid-iron game, or someone who is locked in their short game? It seems like there's a general understanding that, as you said, the fairways and greens will be missed. So I'm curious who you trust to recover from errant shots that will succeed this week.
I think that's a good question. I think the equation is a little bit different in the Open than it is the other majors, right? Because the majors we play in this country, the rough is deep. When you draw a bad lie, the chance of you being able to run something up just to kind of salvage a green, salvage a hole, make a par, and move on, they're not very high. But at the Open, the rough may look tall on TV, but it's wispy. It's not very thick. More often than not, you can at least put a club on the ball and advance toward the green. And yeah, even though it's going to be fairly wet, I still think the ball is going to bounce out pretty far. So you're going to be able to run balls up to green. So I don't think guys that are necessarily inaccurate off the tee are in deep trouble here, especially if the wind comes into play. Wind's going to get everybody, and the stronger that you are, the less clubs you're going to have because you're just going to hit it farther up the tee. I think that's an advantage. But almost every week on the PGA Tour, the emphasis has to be on how good of an approach player you are. I don't care whether you put the ball in play far off the tee. You've got to be able to hit your irons well. If you can hit good approaches, you set up birdie and eagle opportunities. So that's why I think about someone like Victor Hovland or Colin Morikawa or Tommy Fleetwood, guys that are flushing the ball, but they may not necessarily be the longest off the tee. So long as they avoid kind of those hazards, because the bunkers are like half-stroke hazards. As long as you can avoid those, you've got a pretty good chance. And I think you've got to accept that despite your ability, the weather or a bad bounce or something's going to put you in one of those bunkers sometime. No one's going to do what Tiger did and avoid all of them like he did in 2006. So you're going to have to accept that at some point and take your medicine.
Ryan, a long shot at 30-1, Patrick Cantlay. According to CBS Sports, they kind of like, according to one of their predictive models, they like his chances. He's finished in the top 15 in his last 5 majors. What are your thoughts on a guy like Cantlay and his ability to maybe make a run this weekend?
I would kind of lump Cantlay and Schauffele together. not only because they play together in the Zurich Classic, but they are kind of the same guy competitively in that they're extremely talented players, right? I mean, they're both great tee to green players. Not that they're great putters, but both great tee to green players. And bad putting doesn't really mean a bad thing this week. I think slower greens generally are accepted as better for bad players. Speed matters more than line. So that's helpful. But for me, for both of those guys, until you prove to me that you can win one, I can't put money down that you're going to win one. I don't care how many top 15s you have. A lot of Cantlay's top 15s and 10s in majors are frankly from when he was long gone having a chance of winning. So that's cool that you finished well and you played better than most of your peers for 4 rounds. But if you didn't have to deal with the exact same pressure of trying to win, I'm not particularly interested in betting on you to win. I might be really interested in betting on Patrick Cantlay on a top 10 or a top 5 bet. I think he can get there, but I just don't think he's a threat to win.
Now, recent history tells us, Ryan, to bet those at the top, to bet the favorites, to not shy away from them in this tournament. And that dates back even 5 years. I think there was only one name that entered the mix of the top 5 that shouldn't have been there at the beginning of the week. Who's your pick to take the whole thing?
I mean, the non-Scotty and Rory division, I think the most interesting pick is Dustin Johnson because he is criminally undervalued in the betting market. He's something like 30 or 35 to 1, depending on where you go. He was tied for 10th in the U.S. Open, playing pretty well on LIV. I don't know what LIV means or how it translates to major championship golf, but he's still playing really, really good golf. And I think people sleep on him because he played poorly in the first 2 majors this year. I think he found a little something. He's contended in this championship a bunch over the years, still puts the ball out there pretty far. I think he's probably my best value play, but it's hard to look past the big 3. I mean, they just are so good. All they've got to do is be able to putt marginally better than they've been doing week to week, and they win this thing. So I think you're probably secure in the top 3 on the board, but I really think Dustin Johnson's underrated this week.
Ryan, just about a minute left here with you. Kind of an odd question, but I'm curious, what do you think, considering course conditions and things we were talking about earlier, when we're sitting here on Sunday, what do you think is a reasonable winning score for this thing?
I usually think about an Open as minus 16 wins, unless there's some kind of weather intervention, right? And this is a venue that gives up low scores as it is. The question mark is really just the wind blow. If the wind blows, you probably get closer to 14, 13 under par. If the wind doesn't blow, I think 20 to 22 under par to win. I think people can take advantage of it that big. So pretty wide swath of scores, but I think setting it probably an over-under at 16, 17 under is probably fair.
Ryan, we appreciate your time this morning. Thanks so much, and enjoy the Open Championship.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
That is Ryan Ballengee, and he is the owner of Golf News Net. That'll do it for us today on the show. We'll be back tomorrow. Thank goodness we made our picks, boys, because they tee off at 12:35 a.m. tomorrow morning. So it's a good thing we did it today and not tomorrow. So if you are interested in watching the Open that early, you sure can. Or you can watch it like us at 5 a.m. That'll do it. We'll see you tomorrow.